Hey everybody, ReefGrrl here, and welcome to ReefGrrl Live. I'm so glad you could make it. The whole idea here is to have some fun, chat, ask a few questions, maybe show us what you're doing, and get to know each other a little bit better. So sit back, relax, grab a drink. The stream is about to begin. Hi everybody, welcome again on a Saturday night. So glad you could make it. I see we already have 13 people in here watching, and I notice there are a whole bunch of comments going on already. So I'll say hi to everybody, and I'll share a little bit of update news with you guys, and then we can see who might join us tonight. So we had Tony Close, UK Reef, in first tonight. Hi Tony, welcome. Hi Amanda Bassel, nice to see you. Carlos 23, hey my favorite Carlos, I hope you're doing well. Broke Reef Man 45, hey Paul, sorry my cat tried. Yeah, I was in here getting videos uploaded, and my cat ended up jumping right up on the table, so had to get him down, and he's a 15-pounder and very awkward. He's a huge cat and he did not go quietly. Hey Straight Reefer, nice to see you. There's Filipino Reefer, Benny, glad you could make it. Marcus Aurelius. I think I say that wrong every single time I say it, so I apologize. Let me see. Marcus Aurelius. Okay, 187. Well, hey to you all. Hey to you, Marcus. Chi-Town Reefers here. Hey, Chi-Town. Diacanthus Reef, welcome. Nice you could make it. David L. Nice to see you, David. I think this is early for you, so glad you could get here. I bet it's a tabby cat. Oh, yeah, it's a tabby cat. I don't know about Broke Reef Man, Paul, but mine is definitely a tabby cat. So we made a little bit of progress with the tank this week, and one of the most important things, of course, that you have to do is something I'm going to show you this photo, and bear with me for a second because I should have uploaded it before, and I was so busy uploading other things that I completely forgot. So I'll get that now and get that to you and show you what my husband was busy doing for a couple days. Well, a couple hours anyway. Let's find that. And I also have a new wave maker. Oh, that's the wrong place. I just tried to put it. That I'll show you that we installed today and tested out in the first 100-gallon stock tank to see how it would go. And it was pretty cool. But here's the photo of a little bit of work that my husband did this week. And this is one of the most important things for a fish room. I think you might agree. Decorating. Yeah, she's decorated. And I got my shells, my contraband shells that are about 50 years old. I don't think you're even allowed to bring them in anymore. And to the left, you can see some squares, and that is galvanized metal. I have some magnetic rails, and I'm going to use those on those squares of metal to hang my tools. There will also be one to the right for a shorter rail and smaller tools, but we haven't put it in there yet because I'm still waiting to figure out what sort of cabinet I'm going to put on the right and how high the top of it might be. So I don't want to put it too low and end up having not enough space to put what I want to put there. So I was really appreciative that he did that because it's kind of, I don't know, it's like a little boost. It's like something that makes me want to clean up the rest of the unholy mess that's in this room. You can't see it because I checked before the stream and made sure all the junk was pushed out of view. So it actually looks tidy, but it's really not. So there was that. Who else is here? Oh, yep, gray cat, not the black and white one. Okay, then. Nobody else snuck in. So let me see what else I can show you. The holding tank where I have the contents of my Red Sea XL 425 that is no longer. I've been pretty amazed at some of the SPS, how well it's doing, given that it's really jankety. Everything's make do, nothing's really the way it's supposed to be. And the room is so cluttered and I'm so disorganized. But after my fish died, I used ammo lock. Some of you might know about that. There are a couple videos about it, and I lost most of my SPS, but some of it started to come back. I left everything in place, and one of the things that started to come back was the Miyagi torque. So I got my camera and I did my best, but this is at the back of the tank, and I had just fed, so the water's a bit cloudy. And what I'll show you is just a regular size Miyagi torque, but check out this polyp extension. The thing is crazy. So the color isn't where it should be. It's because the lighting in there is just not what is necessary to do that. But we're getting very close to starting to move. In fact, tomorrow we will be moving more things into the 150 stock tank. I have the Kessel light hung over the tank now, and I've got Chad, the skimmer. He's in there working away to get rid of the biofilm that was floating on top of the water from, of course, bacteria and other stuff. It was only in the 150. Not quite sure why that is, but the other tanks with lids don't have it, and the upper tank where the water comes in with a lot of flow didn't have it. So I set Chad up just temporarily for a couple of days to take off that film, and the water got clear almost instantly. So it's something that needed to be done. I probably put too much bacteria in. I used Microbacter 7, and I wanted to do that to aid in the cycle, because even though I will be bringing seasoned rock over, and I added seasoned media from the canisters and a really horrible sponge that was dirty to help with the bacteria, I felt it would not hurt to add a little bit of Microbacter 7. So I might have gone one extra day. And so the result was slightly cloudy water in there. But it's looking good now. And pretty soon the Deltec skimmer will come out. And, well, probably tomorrow, in fact, like I said, I do have one piece of sort of experimental canary in the coal mine, red Montipora capricornus. And the color in the holding tank was really starting to bleach out. It was badly faded, almost white. And so I thought, well, I have nothing to lose by bringing it over. So it's been in there for a week and lost no tissue, none whatsoever. And the color is starting to become a little more there. So we'll see what happens with it. It's very encouraging because I, of course, expected RTN, given that the tank was less than 2 weeks into a cycle. But seems good. Nitrate was 0.2 one day, and that's all I saw. After that, it was zero. The ammonia was zero. Nitrite was zero. So I have been adding food, and we'll see what happens when I bring the rest of the corals, or when I bring some of the sand bed stuff over, because there's going to be stuff growing on them, and I will be putting coral food in and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I'm going to try and take it slow and just experiment with the first couple of days and see how everything looks. So yeah, that's what's been happening. And who else came in? A bunch of people. Hey, Bongos Reef. Nice to see you. Reef Keeper. Hi, Phil. I hope you're doing well. And there's T40. Glad to see you, T40. Yeah, I hope everybody's staying safe. We do have Alex G in the waiting room, so I think I'll bring him in. And then I'll show you the other thing that we did with WaveMaker. Okay. Hi, Alex.
Evening.
How are you?
Tired, as always.
You've had a busy week.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm going to show the folks my new WaveMaker that we tested out this afternoon. And I have to say, it's noisy, more so than other powerheads I've tried, but the water really moves. So I'll show you that. We took a video of it. It was pretty surprising. Okay.
Grandma's setup. Yeah, you like it? Good job.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm probably going to be accused of being a bad grandmother. But anyway. There was a lot of water got moved in that tank. Then there was a bit of splashing on the floor too. Anyway, sorry. Hey,
That was a good one. I like that. I was like, this should be interesting.
Tom.
I was not expecting that.
Man, he loved it. He was not too happy. Well, he didn't really cry or anything when we took him out, but yeah, it was. And the water's a balmy 78, so much more warmer than the French River, which is where they're used to going. Oh, look at this! Nice, congratulations, Phil. Just became a grandfather on the 28th. Ooh, 9 weeks. Well, my daughter was 5.5 weeks early, and it's very sort of emotional and stressful time, but the care and the technology and everything is so good these days that I'm sure it'd be fine. Hey, there's Lynn Reef Nerd. Please, that fish is way too big for that. Yeah, we were going to put him in the 150.
Just remember, you didn't say it was a fish. It was a water flow mechanism.
That's right. And you know what? I never did put the name up on the screen, but let me. I was going to do this first, but I was kind of nervous about it because you know what people are like. But where is? Oh yeah, this is the name of it. Ellis Wavestream 100 because his name is Ellis. Yeah. Just having my little joke.
I like it.
Thanks. So you've been really busy with glass and test fills, and I saw today you had a leak and you had to go back and drain and fix the leak 4-inch in the 4-inch bulkhead.
Yeah, just a little seeping leak, and I wasn't surprised by it. I've never had a bulkhead that big, but trying to quote unquote hand tighten that is not something that you could really do, which is why I have like a makeshift tool out of 2x4s made for it.
Yeah.
And the problem is too, is that HDPE, which is what it's being used for, is not entirely flat. It has waves and curves and inconsistencies in it. It's not like glass or acrylic.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went ahead and I pulled it off and I siliconed it in. So
yeah,
it ain't going nowhere now.
Yeah, we had 2 leaks in the 100, the chamber that Ellis was in, because that's the water change stock tank, and there's a drain at the bottom. And my husband put a bulkhead, and he had to reduce it to the size of a garden hose because they come with 1.5 inch. So he had to get it down to, I think it's a 1/2 inch garden hose. So there's a couple reductions and this and that. And he took out the bulkhead that it came with because everybody says they always leak, and he put a different one in. And he thought he had it completely silicone both times. And both times when he took it off, he found gaps where the silicone hadn't, and so I think what happened the first time is there was a gap, and then the second time he put more in that area. And I don't think silicone sticks to itself. So once there's a gap and it's cured, you have to start over pretty much. So after the second time, though, no more leaks. And we have actually drained that tank and refilled it a couple of times. And the water change thing works great. So yeah, it's not fun when they leak like that.
No, and it expedited a 50% fill test of the 150. So
yeah,
because that's basically in my case. Mm-hmm. Once it started happening, I'm like, all right, well, I got to pump the water somewhere, so I guess I'm testing the return pump.
We did the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I filled up that tank to 50%, and then the next morning, after about 13 hours or so, I siphoned that tank out back into the sump and
Mm-hmm.
topped it off with the rest of the water, and then I just made another 200 gallons of RODI. So
And that was a full day. Hey, Gabe's
there's a
Reef.
lot of other stuff in there in the middle too.
Hey, Gabe's Reef Tampa. Hey, Terrence Little Ocean. Taryn, if you're around for a little while, or if you watch the replay, the first, where are we at? Time was
16 minutes.
16 minutes. If you watch the first 15 minutes or so of the replay, if you're arriving late and you missed it, I showed everybody my Elis WaveStream 100. It's a new wave maker that we put in the 100 today and tested out. So it was very successful. Silicone grease is best friend for reef keeping. I put it on everything, all threaded stuff, skimmers, O-rings, bulkheads, everything. Yeah. Yeah. T40s, getting his tank back on track. Makes it easier to tighten. Yeah, and my husband found that thing where they say hand tighten it and then get the wrench and go a quarter turn with a wrench. And that's it. You shouldn't go anywhere beyond that because you end up distorting that gasket and then it could split or it causes problems and you end up with a leak. Yeah, the things we're learning.
Yeah, it'll be more fun when I have to pull the plug out of that bulkhead eventually. Hopefully when I'm wrenching on it to do that, I don't break the seal.
Yeah, that's right, because the drain that my husband installed in this tank, of course, the bulkhead is here and the drain comes out, but there has to be an extension on it so that it can go on an angle down to the floor to where the garden hose is. Because if it doesn't go on an angle down to the floor quick enough, I end up tripping on it if it's sticking out too far, right? Or if it's off the floor. So to get it on that angle, he the first time he put it on, he got it right. But then he realized that if it gets bumped at all, it's going to rotate in the bulkhead and it could very well do exactly that. So he built this little contraption or this little stand out of a whole bunch of pieces of 2x4 of different lengths to put it on an angle. Looks like a little pyramid, to put it on an angle so that it just goes naturally down. He's got clamps on there and the whole deal. And so now it won't move unless we actually take it apart. And that's good because the hose goes on with a quick connect. So when the time comes to drain it, put the hose on, it's already fed into the floor drain, and I just open the valve and I can drain that tank. So it's hopefully going to work the way we want when the time comes to actually do water changes, because we've already tested the bypass and that works really well. So yeah, it's been I don't know. I heard back this week from the LFS about my tank, and apparently the tank builder is just waiting for the glass to be polished, and he's waiting on the stand I guess to finish the powder coating, or I imagine it's welded and then it's powder coated. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think he does the stands in house, other than for installing the steps maybe, or the platforms that are the fold up. Fold down. I can't remember whether they're going to fold up or down. Doesn't really matter.
Anything once they're done welding, they'll send it to the powder coater.
Yeah. So that's been cool, and we bought all the materials to create the structure for the ceiling to hang the lights. And those Orfec Atlantic V4s are no joke. Those things are super heavy. So he's plasti dipping 40 J bolts. That's going to be part of the kind of flexible location hanging system. Figured it'd be easier to install a zillion options for where to hang it than it would be to go, geez, I really wouldn't mind moving it 3 inches that way and have to somehow get up there and drill, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
We just spent the $50 and bought all of the bolts, and they're all going to be hanging up there. But he's trying to create a really nice pattern so that it doesn't just look like a bunch of random black bolts everywhere. So he's plasti dipping them because, of course, they're whatever they're made of. I don't think they're made of stainless. I think it might be galvanized. I'm not sure what the metal is. Maybe galvanized wouldn't be strong enough to actually be a bolt.
A lot of them are zinc plated.
Zinc plated, maybe. Yeah. So, it's all these little things that you can't, it's like little, well, it's like these little baby steps that you have to take. Oh, hey, Chili Wills Reef.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of it's been the little stuff, go to what's that on my walls? So the white stuff's insulation, and then the ceiling is all the plastic. So the insulation came with the house.
Yeah, you dexterized your ceiling for humidity purposes, right?
Yeah, and the insulation's for the frost line.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, hey, and here's the thing. My husband made the lids for the 2 tanks that were open, put them on, and we have a fan, one of those large room fans that rotates, like, or desk fan. And he put that up on a cabinet near the, like, kind of on the cabinets I have between the sump area and the mechanical area. And he's got it rotating so the air is moving through the room. The humidity down there last night, the room was 70 degrees and the humidity was 39%. So with the open shallow 50 and the open 150, the covered 2 100s, 39% humidity. So we're really hoping that, as we progress into spring and summer, that gives us room to play with the ambient humidity of whatever the air is that's coming in from outside, and hopefully we won't have an issue with it, because this is as open as it'll ever get.
When you're measuring the humidity, how many humidity monitors do you have?
We have 2. So we have one that's right on the end of the cabinet, and the other one that's on the other side of the wall by the mechanicals, like out of the sump room. Yeah, and 39%. So we figured them, because he had the fan in another location, and the way it was blowing the air was more into the wall. So now it's blowing the air more into the room. So it seems to be circulating better. It's more even. So yeah, it's we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it, definitely, because that's a problem I don't want to have. Oh, hey, Robert Poorman. Glad you could make it tonight. Hey, don't apologize, but you might want to watch the first 15 or so minutes of the replay if you want to see a video of my new E-less WaveStream 100 wave maker that we tested out today. So it's pretty cool. Skinner JW, hello. Oh, here we go. Upgrading from 10 years of canister to a sump. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I guess it was so successful I was scared to rock the boat. Yeah, I can relate to that feeling. I have canisters right now running the holding tank, 2 of them. And I probably don't maintain them as often as I should, i.e. clean out the sponges and rinse the media and all that. But you do what you can, right? Hi, Tina Bloomfield. Happy Saturday to you. Cool. Robert Poorman says, hi, Cindy and Alex.
Who?
Robert Poorman. Robert, you're in the UK, right? Am I right? I can't remember. Yeah. So you now have glass in the 700?
Yep.
Cool. And that's what we see behind you there?
Yep. It is T- 1 week to be prepared for a fill test.
Nice. The braces are all still up?
Yep.
Inside?
I'm not going to touch anything until it is next Saturday. So.
Yep. Hey, maybe we could see that live, Alex. Although you would probably want to do it during the day, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'll probably be doing that just early on.
Well, you want the stores to be open in case there's something happens and you need to get a massive sump pump.
It will quickly become a please mute Alex. He's using language that's not appropriate.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
and
it's not going to be that glorious. It's only going to get 12 inches of water in it. So
yeah, it's still kind of nerve-wracking though, because this hobby, you just don't know what's going to happen next. And
yeah, I just shimmed off the tank right before the live stream started. I was like, ooh, I could do that right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, Oh, busy doing getting plumbing supplies to do drain lines for the 700, the 400, and then what else did I need? Oh, I ran out of razor blades because I decided on my 150 gallon that I wanted to experiment with reverse armoring the corners with some extra strips of glass.
On the outside then? Yeah.
It's an older tank and the silicone's never really moved. And I'm kind of curious to see if I reverse armor it, if I see any changes in it, or if I would call it experimental.
Yeah.
So, because I looked at it, I was like, oh, I probably should think about resealing this, but I'm not doing that right now.
No. Well,
So-
and I mean, you can't really do it inside and do a good job because of the silicone that's already there, right? Like you pretty much only
Yeah.
have a choice of going outside to get
That's
a good clean 90.
that's why I went that way, because to go inside would have been very challenging, and that inside's holding a seal on it too. So
Mhm.
if it's not broken, I don't want
No.
to mess with it. So by going on the outside on the four corner, it's just extra on there, and it's
Yeah.
weird because where I see like some things that have been there for years, I'm like, it can't hurt it. Plus, I used RTV 108 on that, so the glass will probably have to break before it separates. So
We know that, don't we? I thought about the armor lock like the Reef Savvy tanks. I figure it's just epoxy. And you know who else used to protect the corners of his tanks is Billy Pipes. And I think he used something black. I don't recall specifically what it was. He does have a video on it if anybody wants to look at it. And his reason for it was to protect it from bumps because he had a little kid at the time. And you're walking through the room carrying something and you knock it with your car keys or so that was his reasoning was just incidental stuff that can happen any day and suddenly you got a big chip and it's all you can think of.
yeah, when I get to the display level, every corner or seam on the glass where two pieces of glass meet, I am going to get likely a 2 to 3 inch strip of 3/4 inch glass, and I'm going to put that over the top of it and RTV it down with spacers, so it's like double seamed.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So-
my tank's having armor glass seams on the inside. And it's being Euro braced top and bottom. So because I mean with that much, it calculates at 360. But with displacement and rocks and sand and finished water level, I figure it'll be somewhere between 320 and 330.
And it can't hurt to seal the joints up more, because those are the places where you can have a failure. And that's why with this, I was like, well, we'll toy around with it. It's an older tank. I'll try this out. It's not going to hurt anything. And, before I test fill it all the way, I'm going to just let this cure for a few days or so, and then I'll fill that tank up.
So it's a tank that has a top and bottom rim.
Yeah.
And you'll get 3/4 inch glass and wrap it around the corners. Oh no, your displays you'll get 3/4 inch. Yeah.
Yeah, displays I'll do that. For this, I just used some. I had an old 40 gallon sitting around with 1/4 inch glass on it. I just cut that up on the tile saw today.
Yeah.
Lots of fun. Glass doesn't cooperate with tile saws very well.
You cut glass with a tile saw. Oh my god!
It's a diamond. It's a diamond wheel. It'll go right through it.
I guess. I guess. I guess you kept it wet.
Yeah, it's a wet saw. So
you didn't do the score and snap thing.
Well, I needed to cut strips that were 2.5 or 2 inches wide, so you can't score and snap that very easily. So I tried it once. I tried one. It shattered the piece of glass into like 20 pieces. I was like, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah. My husband does that all the time, but he does stained glass, so he's used to working with smaller pieces and all the different techniques there are to tap glass and hold it a certain way so that it he's good
Yeah,
at that.
that's why after I broke a couple, I was like, I'm gonna run out of glass here. I need to like salvage.
And
So-
so you'll take the RTV and essentially glue that glass onto the corner of the 150, wrap around the corners there. Oh,
Yep,
and by
that's
the
right.
way, there's a local fish store around here that has a yellow mantis shrimp.
Ah, pseudo-squilid. Yeah, so this is the new piece here, and then it's just
Okay.
overlapping the armor. But see the old seam. I don't know. You can see it. There's a couple of old bubbles
Yeah.
and stuff in it.
Yeah.
They only go down about halfway, and it's been there, but it's yeah, you know how that is.
Oh,
It's-
God, yeah. You can't stop thinking about it.
So I did this, and whatever happens, happens. I know this might not. I don't think with this 1/4 inch on top of this, I don't think it'll be able to go anywhere.
No, and I mean, the RTV looks like it's relatively clear. So it's not like you got a big
Yeah.
eyesore, and this is in your fish room, and it's not like it's a display
Yeah.
tank. So more
What-
utilitarian.
What was that Mantis a spear?
It was exactly like Miss Stabby Stabby. That
Yeah,
kind.
it sounds just like Miss Stabby Stabby because there's not too many.
Yeah.
The common yellow ones you see are that one. The pseudosquilid cilata, I think, is what they are. Heck, I haven't looked at that scientific name in a while.
Yeah, no. Well, if anybody looks on Instagram at Sustainable Marine Canada, that's a fish store in London here, close to where I live, and they had that on Insta that it was one of the guests at their store. So I haven't had a chance to look at their website to see whether it's actually for sale, but I'm sure there are people that are just waiting to snap that up.
Yeah. You gotta pass the test to be able to purchase. You must hand feed.
Yeah. Well, they did. I think it was in the no, it wasn't that one. There was another Insta post where they had a peacock mantis that kept shattering the containers that they were putting it in, and it showed it in a acrylic small box, and you could hear it hitting the sides. So I don't know. I may have it wrong because I might have been looking at it too fast, but anyway, the yellow one's at Sustainable Marine. I know that, or was. That was just today, I think. So
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of mantis I'm gonna put in that 150, or if I'm gonna. I've thought about, because it's such a big tank.
yeah.
I'm probably going to divide it in half or into thirds. I haven't decided yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of it'll depend on what is available.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind another peacock mantis. I've had them before. I'd really like to get a larger spear,
Mm-hmm.
or some other varieties out there too. So I just have to see what becomes available, because like that little yellow spear, there's a lot of very interesting behaviors to observe.
Yeah. Yeah. Reefing with O is Alex has gray in his beard. His mind is blown.
Where have you been, Oh?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey Seymour, how are you doing tonight? Skinner JW has a question. How do you quarantine with no meds in Canada? The guy that I got my fish from, I haven't got any from him in a while. He used chloroquine phosphate, and he has a source. I'm pretty sure it's veterinary. So because he's using it on animals, so that's what he uses. He also uses copper. I don't know whether they use a generic copper or whether they actually do use cupramine. I don't know whether cupramine is the only aquarium safe copper medication. I have no idea. I've never looked into it. But in my case, if I felt I had to quarantine a fish, in any case, they go under observation before they go into a tank. So that's one of the things I'm going to do with Mollywood, is keep it up as an observation tank so that when I get fish, they go in there. I keep a really close eye on them, make sure they're all good. I have metformin that I bought that I can use if I have to. No, not metformin. That's wrong. Furan 2. Furan? Yeah, Furan 2. I've just been through all the meds that I had. So I do have some cupramine from way back. I have some of that other stuff, furan too, because Dave's nano tanks always use that. And I would use, if I was worried about ick, I would do hyposalinity and tank transfer, because that's one of those things that takes longer. You have to be a little more careful, but in the end, you can get there if you do it right. So I think it's a matter of having the facilities set up to be able to have a tank or 2 tanks or however you decide to do it. But hyposalinity, tank transfer are certainly options. Not as easy maybe as meds, but then with meds, you got to do all the testing. If you're using copper, make sure the copper levels are right. Do the water changes because you have no biologicals going on, and then you got to make sure the copper levels are right. So to me, that seems like such a pain. It would be easier to just do hypo and follow it up by tank transfer a couple of times just to be sure. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I do have some meds. I know a guy that has chloroquine phosphate, and there's the option at home of just doing the hypo if it's ick that's of concern. Paragard also. I had a Royal Grandma once that had flukes, and so I just treated with Paragard because she was in a separate tank, in an observation tank, and she was fine after that. So
Yeah, Paragard is my friend, because all my new fish get their last round of acclimation. I dump Paragard into their bag they're acclimating in, and that's their final like 15 minutes is sitting in Paragard, and then they go to the like the fish wash where they're getting put into a specimen cup, and then other cups are dumping water into them to flush them.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't get any in the tank.
Yeah.
Skinner JW has a question. Can you keep more than 1 mantis in a tank?
So, generally, a lot of stomatopods or mantis shrimp in general are solitary. There are, however, a few species that will form bonded pairs. I've never kept any. I have had a tank with three mantis in it that lived together for over a year. And I had one big peacock mantis, and then I had 2 other smaller smashers. And I'm sure they were very much well aware of each other being in the tank. And basically they, they had their own little zones that they would stay in. And it worked, but a lot of times if they have 2 of the same species that I've never tried it, I'd be very nervous too, because a lot of times if they're not going to do any kind of mating, or they're not a species that's known to pair up, they'll likely fight to the death if it's not a big enough territory, because they actually have a pretty big area they cover. And generally when they come across another mantis that has a cave or something they want, they'll start fighting for it. So
interesting.
So yeah, it's very much that would be a trial and error thing, and they're not very readily available, and some of the nicer ones can be a little more pricey, so I'd definitely be nervous about that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, hey, Salty Reef. Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, there's a couple of good researchers out there that do quite a bit with just behavior and species, like Roy Cadwell. I think he's out of Berkeley. He's somewhere in California. Roy's List of Stomatopods. If you ever want an ID guide and know a little bit about them.
Okay. Roy's List, ROY, guy's name. And what's the last name?
I can't spell it. Just put in Roy's List of Stomatopods. That'll pop it up.
Yeah.
He's got all the species that he's cataloged, I believe, and a little bit of info about them.
Right.
So,
hey, Salty Reef, Drama D, Tyler D, everybody's jumping in. Battle Royal. Simple. Oh, good. Simple is better. Yeah, I do my best to buy fish pre-quarantined, and I was working with one guy. I don't know whether I can still work with him because I'm an hour further away from where he lives, and I don't feel comfortable shipping fish around here because the condition of some of the packages that I've gotten, you can't believe it. It's almost like they drop kick them. Like I don't know what goes on, whether it goes through a certain terminal that hates their manager and takes it out on the parcels. I have no idea. But I've never had so many damaged parcels come as since I moved here. So I don't think I would take a chance on shipping fish. And because he's an hour further away, that turns it into a 4.5 hour round trip. And I don't want to do that. So I do have a couple other sources. My LFS that I've been working with that I did the tour of, they have been working internationally getting fish direct from suppliers. They don't go through a distributor here once they get here. And they've got a lot of really good fish in lately. And they do have a treatment program. They carefully examine the fish. They do put them, they're not for sale right away. They're in tanks with copper, with whatever they need. And they watch them very carefully, and they won't sell them if they're not healthy. So that's all new since the new guy took over compared to what they used to do. So I would feel pretty comfortable buying fish from there. Well, the yellow tang came from there. So yeah. Anybody else? Filipino reefer. Hey, Benny. Hi, B. Spieg. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's going to be interesting getting fish for the new setup. The LFS I was just talking about got a shipment in from the Caribbean, and Alex, he got about 20 Royal Grammas. And man, I wish I was ready for fish.
Sounds like a fun shipment to me.
Uh-huh. Yep. He got a juvenile black angel, gray black angel, which aren't reef safe, but what else did he get? Some sleeper gobies. I think he got an orange shoulder tang, not from the Caribbean one, but from his previous one from the Philippines, I believe. Lots of really interesting fish. But, you know, I was saying that to my husband. If he's getting those fish now, chances are good that when I'm ready for fish, I can just ask him when the next shipment of whatever's coming and deal, you know, get the fish that I have on my list. So we'll see.
Yeah, my local guy that I work with for fish, he basically the way that I did it for the last system, which I thought worked out really well, is he was given a budget and a list.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was ready for something, or every now and then there'd be a, hey, keep an eye out for this. But generally, you know, he was going to hand pick stuff at a wholesaler. So he'd go out there with the list and he'd come back with what he could get.
Yeah.
The only thing that won't be as nice now is like his store was like literally a mile from my house. So now he's about 10 miles away. So I'll have to drive a little further.
Yeah.
It's not a 4-hour round trip though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll probably try to do a similar arrangement where I'd take them right in the wholesaler bag.
Yeah.
He'd bring them in, he'd float them, and I'd be like, all right, I'm coming to get them. And he'd have them all bagged up a little larger bags so that they could be okay for a while. But
yeah. Well, and this is the advantage of you're going to have the 90 for the new fish that come in, and that's why I thought I'm just going to put Mollywood up and keep it running with a bunch of mushrooms or something in it. And I have the option of removing anything that I put in there and moving it over to one of the stock tanks if I need to put medication in at some point. But I think observation is key because then you'll know what to do. I mean, rather than just put everything in and hope that you catch it all and put the fish through that stress, just kind of see how they do. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the plan for my 90 is I'll probably cheat a little on that at the beginning here when I get this system up and running, just because I literally have 4 fish left.
Yeah.
I got to get some herbivores and stuff in. So once I'm ready for that, I'll probably throw a handful of fish into this and get them going where I need them to be. And then once I get further along, like then I'll get that 90 set up and running. And then I'm still kind of in shock that I am just a few days past being in this house for 3 months, and I've gotten as far as I have.
You've been working like a madman over there, and I'm sure that you've got motivation because you've got. I mean, the other part of it is if it's one thing to have a project where you reach a certain stage, like your 700, and you have to step back for a week, and there's nothing else you're working on. But if you've got a whole bunch of things that are options to work on, it keeps you engaged in it, right? And then before you know it, the week has gone by and it's, oh, I can go back to this now. I think that probably helps make sure that you take the time you need to take, because it's not as if you don't have anything else to do, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like a good example that I filled up the sump yesterday all the way to capacity, and
Yep.
So it has water in it.
Whoa.
Which smells absolutely lovely right now, from some of the old marine buildup that was on things that didn't get washed off. So
I know that smell. Trust me.
but it's filled up all the way. It's not going to ever hold this height generally. So this is a good stress test on all the bulkheads. And I've got the pump running through the UV right now, and that's running the way it should be. So that's all checked. All the pump controllers are. I have 5 pumps that'll be in this tank alone for right now. So, but having all, it took a whole day just to sit here and do all the wiring and the somewhat cable management job that was completed. Some of it, I'm just like, there's just not much I could do to make this look pretty.
No, I'm starting to collect cords myself, especially the skimmer. Where am I going to plug it in? Oh, over there. Well, that means that wire has to go around the back of the pipe, the exit pipe for the sump pump, the sump pit, so that it's, like it just, it's turning into a mess.
This is about as pretty as it's going to get over here. So.
Alice Holbert has a comment on your skimmer, but first, after QT, my guys, 90 days after outbreak and understanding of minor drops, I don't trust anyone but myself. 1 drop in copper and days restart. Very scary. Yeah. Hey, the Herm 14. Oh, by the way, hi, Alice. Nice to see you. Oh, yeah, Marcus Aurelius. Find out your meds are safe with your fish. Cardinals, for example, are really sensitive. Yeah, that's the first thing I always check. And sometimes it's surprising how long it can take and how much looking you have to do to get the specifics of whether what you're thinking of using is going to be harmful to what you're going to use it on. The Herm Late Night Aquarium stream helps me with motivation to tackle my weekly tank cleaning. Well, there you go. Oh, yeah, here's the... Look at that skimmer. WTF. Alice, you've been missing out. Alex G's Aquarium. Go check it out on YouTube. He has videos about this. He made this.
Yeah, this is a little different level of DIY. So yeah, the skimmer goes all the way down to like 4 inches off the bottom, and it's got 2 Jabo DCP 15,000s with needle wheels on them for recirculation. And then it's not hooked up yet, but the 400 to start is going to feed the skimmer with gravity. So it's a gravity fed skimmer.
Yep. And so, Alex, can you tell me, is this Alex G's Aquariums? Do I need an apostrophe or anything in there? Or is it aquarium?
space on the. It's ALXG. No space
No
there.
space. All right, I'll fix that. So if anybody wants to look that up, and honestly, subscribe because this is going to be quite the ride.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's been a venture already. I mean, I'm still waiting on glass for this one, so fingers crossed next week.
Yep.
Uh,
There we go.
the tanks that will go here eventually are MIA right now, and I have to follow up, find out where they're at.
Uh-oh.
Well, I was told by the manufacturer it would not be till May that they would be ready. And I asked the place I bought them from, I go, isn't there anything else you guys could do to, like, find one somewhere that you already have? Because they said they were in stock. So then they're like, oh, yeah, we have a couple in stock. Do you want those? I'm like, yes, please.
Oh, my God.
I don't want to wait till May. And they're like, well, it's a little extra for shipping. I'm like, that's fine. Just ship them here. The only thing that did arrive is, which it actually probably helped my little OCD problem, is my new lid arrived that I lost one of them someplace in the move, and it was driving me nuts.
Yeah,
I
no
spent like
kidding.
an hour and a half looking for it one day, and I was like, you have to stop this.
Yeah, remember we talked about that? You know when you're going to find it because it's there now.
Probably. Yeah, I got it now, so I'll find it probably next week. Like, it's probably in a box or something. So
Yep. Hey, Diacanthus, just trying to clean and listen. Oh, that's good. That's cool.
But yeah, but no, at least this is all done. The 150's done. 700 shimmed up now. That's ready to go. I still got to reassemble the canopy for it.
Have I maybe spelled it wrong?
No,
Maybe
it should be ALXGS space aquariums.
Skinner
So.
JW, I did correct the spelling. There's no space between Alex and G's. So, yeah. Never mind, I can't spell. All right. As long as we can find you, that's the main thing, right?
That makes two of us.
In all seriousness, though, I remember watching the start of what you were doing when you were stapling plastic, and it was so massive. And I loved your catwalk that you had behind your aquariums, and seeing that. And then Gallery Aquatica, one of their clients in one of their videos had the fold up steps or platform, and I went, okay, that's what I'm getting, so that none of this on a ladder stuff. And it's honestly, if you have the time and interest, you really should check it out. The videos from 3 years ago now?
Yeah, let's see. Well, it's probably been about 5.5 years since I started on that build.
Yeah, and you had been underway for roughly 2 years, I think, by the time you started doing YouTube videos. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
I started making videos when I installed the glass in the reef tank, and then I made a couple here and there for reef to reef, and then I just started making videos, and then I got a little too in depth with the video stuff, and then I had to rack off from it, so now I'm to monthlies.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really hard to know because so much can happen in a short space of time. And I'm struggling right now with, do I do the video on the ATO, which is also going to cover evaporation, lids, and humidity, or do I do the video on the heating system, which, by the way, she's working. And it'll be interesting, a different challenge once we have the tank hooked in to, get everything to the right temperature again. So which one do I do? And then I have another short video on the progress of the cycle of the something, and that includes getting the skimmer out of retirement, and it just too much going on.
Hey, Johnny Martinez.
Nice to see you, Johnny.
Yeah, it's Yeah, that I think you'll find once you get that radiant heating system up and running, that despite the volume of water that you have, it's going to get to its temperature and it's not going to move very easily.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because the water's constantly circulating and constantly evening itself out. And I mean, we're indoors. Where I'm sitting is directly above where all of that is, so it's within proximity. So even because we have the heating coil in the final chamber that the pumps will pump up, the warmest water is going to come from that chamber up here. So that's going to be a little interesting to make sure I'm not pumping water into the tank that's going to be above the temperature I want to maintain in this tank. So I'm not sure what to expect there, whether I'll have to lower the overall temperature so that it's not so hot in that last chamber. I'm not sure.
So where is the temperature probe located that's going to control it?
The temperature probe right now is in the 150 stock tank. And that's the one that's staying stable.
So whatever tank, what I did in my last system was that the temperature probe was basically where all the water drained from the displays.
Okay. Yeah.
So that means whatever temperature of water is hitting that is the temperature of the main display itself, or as close approximation you can get. You'll be off by a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But when the water from the display has hit temperature, that's going to shut the heat off at that point. So PEX is not a very efficient heat exchanger. Like you'd have to have hundreds of feet probably to make it go very quickly. Like it'll heat the water a degree or two rather quickly, but it just won't go fast enough ever to make a problem.
Yeah.
So just spacing out that you don't want the temp probe like right next to the heating coil or something.
Oh God, no.
Probably be
well,
bad.
And that's why we put it in the 150, because the 150 is 2 tanks away from where the heating coil is. But what you just said makes a lot of sense to me, because I was trying to figure out how I was going to get the temperature probe from downstairs to upstairs and in the tank. But you're 100% right. It can go in the shallow 50, which is where the overflow is going to come in. In fact, it can go in the green trash can, because that's where the water is going to enter from the display.
And that water should be fully circulated coming from the tank, and it's not going to lose any significant temperature in the drain line.
Right.
Unless you're passing it through a freezer or something in the middle.
Yeah.
But that is one thing. I mean, water it doesn't change its temperature very easily. So that is one thing that's kind of on the side there. And plus the fact you don't have something that's going to be like, oh, if the heating coil's out of the water for more than 30 seconds, it'll start to boil. We don't have that type of heating we have to worry about. It's much lower temperature.
That's right. Yeah, it's true. Marcus Aurelius, sorry. Marcus Aurelius 187. I almost built one of my own tanks, but a factory glass one was 60% off, so it was a budget thing. Wish I built it, though, after the fact. Yeah. Do you remember Dave's nano tanks, where because he worked in the city? He was a cable guy, and he found plate glass by the side of the road, by the curb. So he asked the guy, he said, "Can I have this glass?" And that's what became his 100-gallon tank. He built that tank from plate glass that was out at the curb to be picked up for trash. That's pretty awesome. Oh, Johnny Martinez still fighting hair algae. Oh, geez.
Here, you want me to put you at ease, Johnny? I'll show you some hair algae.
Yeah, Alice Holbert says, I think it's important to do all vids. It's so back and forth building. People need to see it all. Alice, you're right. And a lot of times I can be way too detailed to the point where it's extremely boring. So when I make that 22-minute video and then I go back and edit it, because even I get impatient when I'm looking at some parts of it going, what? Like, just get on with it. So I do my best to include everything, but not to make it so excruciatingly detailed that it's just going to tune people right out. And sometimes you have to skip small details, but sometimes they're not really relevant except in what you're doing. But generally, as long as you mention them, people don't need to know the exact minutia of what's going on. But I do agree that documenting the steps is you know what? Even if one person comes across it and it helps them or it makes them think of something, it's well worth doing. So Alex is showing us his hair, Algae.
It's a good crop. It's coming in nicely on the walls.
Beauty. Oh man.
I'm gonna have to frag this thing once I get to the new tank. It's getting pretty giant size.
That's the Sinularia?
Well, the Sinularia it's not doing much, but the Japanese or the pink stereoneptia, this thing has become a giant colony.
Wow.
So
cool.
Yeah, that thing's like bigger than my hand now. It was actually starting to invade my heteroxenia over there, and I had to put a empty clamshell there to kind of shield it.
Holy smokes.
That might not be enough, though. I might actually have to frag that thing.
Huh. So here's a dilemma. Skinner JW. So I attached my internal overflow box with silicone and found out it does not bind to acrylic. Will it last? I don't know the answer to that. Alex? How about you?
So, yeah, acrylic. It is the internal overflow box made of glass. That's what I would want to know.
Oh yeah. That would be good to know. Hey,
So,
Cue Balls Reef. These two faces look familiar. Hi, Cindy and Alex.
yeah, if you have an internal overflow box, if it was attached with silicone and it's not going to stick, what you could do is you use bulkheads on the tank, and then you can take a piece of PVC and go out straight from those into your overflow box. If it has a back on it, you could drill out holes and put a uniseal on it and kind of push the PVC up through it to kind of adhere the box that way. So it's on there, but it's not attached to the tank physically, but it still give you the look.
Well, the thing is, an internal overflow box, any leaks that it has are going to be internal.
Well,
right?
it just becomes a matter of is there enough adhesion to allow water to actually overflow on it, or is that water pressure over time, even though it's just a little different, might just rip it off the side one day.
Yeah. Well, we hair algae, holy crap. I'll buy some for my tanks. And Jarny Martinez says, I'll be watching how you kill that.
That won't be hard. It's just not. Unfortunately, the temporary tank is not the appropriate place to try and deal with it. The Spanish hog that's in there, he really likes snails. They're his friend. He likes them so much that he eats them. So that's one problem. I don't have any tanks left because I lost them all, and I will not put any new fish into that tank. It's just not the place to do that. So the other problem is that I don't have a refugium. Technically, that tank is the refugium and the reef tank at once. So once I get the temp tank torn down and move everything, I move all the corals, and the Spanish hog might go in the 150 for a while. I can put some herbivores in that frag tank to start consuming the algae, but more importantly is I could turn on my high power refugium lights on another tank like the 700 and allow a much more appropriate space for the algae to grow. And this is my strategy on algae's kind of been is if you have stuff that consume it and you have another place that's more ideal for it to grow, it's
Yeah.
going to grow in that more ideal space.
Yeah, it's the whole algae scrubber philosophy. Yeah. Yeah, Robert Poorman, that hair algae has an 80s haircut. Flowing in the breeze.
Yeah, I don't think it's not as bad as it was when I pulled out the softball size chunk. So
No.
um,
Oh man, I remember that. I
give it a
had
couple
some
more weeks.
Marcus Arliss, 187. I had some hair algae, got a few crabs, couple trichnoistus urchins, a DIY sulfur reactor, and it's all gone. Or trichnoistus, I guess.
Urchins are they're one of my go-tos. They do knock things over, but they'll eat algae better than anything else out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Long
Skinner,
spine sea urchin can't be beat.
yeah. Skinner JW says the box is acrylic, and acrylic doesn't bind to glass. No.
Nope. So if it's an acrylic box, then you'd have to, if it has a back on it, then you could drill it out, put bulkheads or uniseals through it, and attach it to the drilled holes that way.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of bridge the two materials with the uniseals.
Yep. Or if it'll fit right through the bulkhead, use that too.
Yeah. Broke Reef Man wants to know what made you pull the trigger on plywood tanks, Alex?
So originally, when I moved into my first house in Illinois, and I was given the go ahead to do whatever I wanted in the basement with no limits, essentially, I was trying to think about how big of a tank I could fit down my basement stairs, and quickly learned that I couldn't even fit a 240 down the stairs because the ceiling wasn't tall enough, and it was like a 90-degree turn at the bottom of the stairs with no room. And I started thinking about different methods of building tanks with glass and acrylic, and budget-wise, I didn't have the money to purchase that at the time. And ultimately, I landed on one day I was like, hey, I remember hearing people making tanks out of plywood. Let me go and look this up and see what people have done. And then I started going down that rabbit hole, and I was like, wow, like I'm pretty good at woodworking. I could do this. And I found a bunch of videos, the DIY Monster Fish Keeper site. I watched, well, back when the king of DIY did DIY videos, his plywood tank series helped a lot with understanding the methods to build it, and I decided to do it. So, and now I'm changing that up a bit, and I'm doing pond liner tanks, which are still technically plywood tanks, and it's all out of the fact that I already got most of what I need, and it's fairly inexpensive for the volume of water you're getting.
Yeah, and it's not outside in a pond in the sunshine subject to degradation under UV light. So it's not as if you have to take it down every 10 years, or in your case, 5 years, because you're moving. But
Well,
it'll last longer if that's how you want to run it. If this is where you're going to stay, then you can get decades out of it.
Yeah, and those pond liners are 20-year pond liners too. They're not.
Yeah.
They're 45 mil, and we'll see how they hold up too. I mean, someone just asked me on one of my videos to ask my opinion on pond liner versus like pond armor, and I'm like, I really don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
I could say the pond liner is a lot easier to install. No epoxy mixing and ruined clothes, and taking the process to do it. But at the same time, it's foreign to me in the fact that I other than the temp tank, I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll find out next Saturday.
That's right.
I might, if I'm on the live stream, I might be very happy, or I might be like,
Mr. Grumpy.
So, in the plywood tanks, I did miss that a bit, and I thought about adding in side windows, but ultimately with those big tanks, the front views were so nice, and then having the top down from the walking platform,
Mhm.
it wasn't something I missed. Although I will say that the new display it'll be all glass on the sides. And there will be portions of it at this point in the plan that will be viewable for multiple sides. So only the bottom will be wood and fiberglass and epoxy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing about a side view is it is always a completely different perspective, and I guess that's one of the things people like about peninsula tanks, because you have 3 full viewing panes and each can be totally different from the other. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with mine, because it's going to be 5.5 by 5, like 5.5 front to back by 5. So it's like having 3 big tanks to look at.
Yeah, that was the other thing too that kind of didn't bother me with it, is with both of those old tanks being 4 feet front to back. I mean, it was like, I remember a couple people came over and they're just like, wow, that fish is still going. Where's he going? Is he gonna hit the back?
Exactly.
And then when I tell people, I go, well, the tank's 4 feet front to back. And they, no, it's not. It doesn't look like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, walk around the side. And then they do, and they're like, holy crap, it really is.
Yeah, it's like an optical illusion almost.
You do get that a bit. And there are some views I missed, but, if I was still in that house, I almost was planning a third tank in there.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that didn't happen.
So you just combine them all together.
So yeah, this time it'll be a different thing, but it'll still be split big fish and reef. So
Now, I'm not sure what Alice means by this comment. That's not fair. Unlimited time to trade. BF in LOL. Don't know what you mean by that, Alice, but yeah, Paul says thanks for the discussion of that. Yeah, I could totally see where plywood gives you not quite unlimited, but almost unlimited options for water volume.
I would say up to 3 feet tall, you're pretty safe. And that I originally wanted to I was going to make an 8-foot by 8-foot cube that was going to be a drop-off tank with half being 2 feet tall and half being 4.
Mm-hmm.
But when I didn't really have a space to do that, and that's why they got put side by side. But the other problem is that when I started researching about 4 feet, like what does it take to do a 4-foot tall tank?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people that I saw online with actual tanks that had documented stories that had failures after they went over 36 inches tall was very high.
Yeah.
I saw a couple that were like, yeah, we started at 5 feet tall, and about a year after we built it, the bottom of it blew out. Yeah. And I'm just like, yee, and like, that doesn't sound fun.
Well, and then when you couple that with how we like to move water in our tanks and how we tend to pound glass with the water in our tanks, it makes total sense that the hydraulic pressure at certain points, we can't calculate that, because you can't always take into account where your rocks are going to be, what's the unobstructed travel of the water, what is it going to intersect with that's going to deflect it, how's that, like, there's just so many variables, and it does become trial and error. But I sure wouldn't want to find out the hard way with a blowout of what had to have been around 1,000 or 1,500 gallons. Like, really?
Yeah, the only ones I've seen that have been really successful going into that height, it basically was they stacked 2x4s, one on top of the other, the entire height of the tank. And then they had a layer of plywood or two in the middle or
Oh,
on the inside. But literally, the whole thing was just a wall of 2x4s.
yeah.
And it works. It'll hold the pressure. But, you know, I've seen a couple. I've stumbled across a few other DIY builders that are, some of them are saltwater, but freshwater too. That the only thing I saw with one, I was cringing, and I was like, oh, I really hope that's not how you're testing this, because they were like, well, ready for a fill test, and it was like a 600-gallon tank, and they just tossed the hose in, and we're filling it all at once, and I'm just like, oh, I can't do that. That's gotta fill slow. As much as you want to. I mean,
So is there, I guess part of that fill slow, would there be any play in any of the surfaces, in the sense that if you fill it too quick, it could become unstable because of any kind of flexibility anywhere that travels too far?
well, and that's part of the reason to take it slow, is to watch how things
Move.
slowly unfold. You know, when I test build my 700 at the old house, it was fine until I went to the 100% fill level, and about a week later, I noticed the deflection and bowing in it, and drained it after that.
Yeah, I remember that's when you had to build those braces, the sides for it, essentially. Yeah.
And the thing is that when you put that much, you're throwing a very large amount of weight, thousands of pounds onto everything. You know, everything that has forces exerted against it, yes, there will always be a certain amount of give and take on it. And it's, you know, I guess a good way to put it, and it's not the best thing to think of, but one that I got, is that, you know, you could take a big steel wrecking ball and drop it from 5 feet in the air onto a slab of concrete, and it'll shatter it like a sheet of glass. But if you take your time and you lower it down gently, and you don't just slam it on there, a lot of times it'll take the load. You're not putting that load on there quickly, and you're letting everything balance out. Because that's the thing, if you do have something that's going to fail, and you know, its failure point was going to be at 50% of the fill, but you just filled it to 100%. Is it going to be a little leak, or are you going to have a catastrophic blowout?
Yeah, exactly.
You never know. I mean,
Yeah.
you could also fill it slow, have it running, and 6 months later, install an old-fashioned drain in the floor.
Yeah, it's a new house, right? You've got floor drains there.
Yeah, there's a floor drain here. It ain't gonna do a whole lot if there's a big.
How many hoses you got running in there right now?
Just a condensate line from the furnace, and then my dehumidifier is supposed to show up next week. So.
Yes. Yeah, ours has been running also. That's the other thing I was going to say about the humidity. It's set for, I think he set it for 45%. So it only comes on if the humidity goes above 45%. And
I'm gonna have some fun installing that dehumidifier. It's a 95 pint per day dehumidifier rated for a 5,200 square foot house.
And you're going to drain it into the drain.
Yes, right? It's going to go into the condensate drain, which will go to my pump out. But if the humidity is controlled right, it should never be like a 24/7 run.
No.
So.
Yeah, this is all stuff that we're going to find out as time goes by. But I'll tell you, so far so good. Nothing has come to our attention that's going to cause extreme problems. Once we put those lids on, it was like day and night, because the humidity got up to about 54% at one point. and then he moved the fan and put the lids on. And that's the other thing, those lids are something else that we're going to put in the video about what they're made of, how we made them, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, lids on sump tanks, that makes such an enormous difference in the amount of moisture coming into the air.
Yep.
That, yeah. I mean, every time I pull the top off, I don't think mine are getting that way yet. There's a little moisture on here, but it's not. I also don't have a skimmer running and overflows dumping in, because that's what really dumps in the water. I mean, my 150 out there, that thing's evaporating off 5 gallons every couple of days. So it's, and the auto top off system is really getting a little tired of it at times, because the auto top off is me.
Yeah. So Paul, no, we did not put plastic on the basement ceilings, and because it's a new house, we have an HRV, we have air conditioning, there's a dehumidifier. We were talking earlier about the fan, the lids on the tanks, and once the system is up and running, depending on what I put in the 150, it could also be partially covered. As it is right now, the blue carbon bridge is above it, and above 1/2 of it, and then I guess maybe a third, the back third, and then the rest of it is out the front. If I use that as a refugium and I need a light over it, then I won't be putting a lid on it. But until I'm doing that, then we'll have a lid on there. So we'll see what happens. We also have ducting where we can run another exhaust fan if we have to. It's meant for the rough-in bathroom, and it could be some time before we ever do put a powder room in down there. Because I mean, why? So many people think you need 3 bathrooms in a bungalow, a 2-bedroom bungalow that's actually only a 1-bedroom bungalow, because I'm sitting in the other 1-bedroom that's going to have a giant fish tank in it. But, until we get a bedroom finished down there, we probably won't finish the bathroom. So we're pretty optimistic. And there's a window right beside that area as well. So we're optimistic that the measures we're taking will really help. And my husband also talked about getting one of those moisture meters for the wood. Because it's a new build, it is going to have some moisture in it until it dries out. And we want to monitor that to make sure that it doesn't increase, because I remember you talking, Alex, about the wood being a sponge, and that's the last thing we want. And if we see any sign of that, then yeah, we'll have to do something. We'll have to put sheeting up or of some type to stop that.
Yeah, and if the dehumidifier will help with that too, because if it's if it has dry air available, and the air is just not being constantly filled with moisture, it'll help to dry that stuff out.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't want to get to the point of, hey, what's that black stuff growing on the top of my ceiling there? No. And why is everything wet all of a sudden?
What were you doing down here with black spray paint? Yeah. Not good.
Yeah, and that's, it's all a matter of the lids are such a big thing. If you got a means to control the humidity with a good dehumidifier and the lids, but for me, the plastic is just the icing on the cake there to try and keep it contained in this room and not let it get anywhere else. Because even the display tank is going to have a duct that comes into this room to get the air pulled in
and dealt with. Yeah. Diacanthus, you're still planning at-source ducting for humidity management, correct? Yeah, that's what you were just talking about.
Yep. So the 700 and the 400 back here are going to get ducts put on them, and that's going to get drawn into the dehumidifier. It's a ducted dehumidifier, and then there'll be an additional duct that runs out to the the display eventually, so it can put a negative pressure on that canopy when it activates and suck the humid air out. And then I'm likely going to exhaust it into the finished basement. So I'll probably have another duct I'll install to just push the air out into the basement.
Yeah.
So.
JT Reefer says, oh, hey, JT Reefer. I am building a 370-gallon plywood after watching Alex's build. Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun to build.
Marcus Aurelus, just one of my tanks is 3 to 5 gallons evaporated in 16 hours. Yeah. Multiply that by about 9. A lot of water in the air. I made an exhaust fan hooked to a humidistat. A must-have. Yeah. Yeah, it's always a surprise. I've talked about our 9 freshwater tanks that we had at one time in the basement. And we moved into that house in 2002. It was new. And we immediately got, we put a pond in the backyard and poured a patio at the back. That's how I know the year, because it was etched in the concrete. And when we brought those goldfish in for the winter, that's what started it. So I would say 2003, 2004 was when we got our first indoor aquarium. And then my husband started saying, oh, you know, I'd like to try some different fish and this and that. And that's when you get into the whole, well, you can have these fish, but you can't have those fish in the same tank as these fish. So if you want those fish, they need their own tank. And oh, by the way, they get so big, you're going to need a 100-gallon tank or 120. So we had 9 varying in size from 35 gallons up to 125 gallons. There was a 90, a couple of 55s, a 125, and a couple of 40s, and some others I forget. So that would have been around 2007, and that was the winter. All of our windows in the house were wet on the inside. And that's when we went, okay, because
that's not a good sign.
No, it went from like 2 tanks to house goldfish within the space of, I want to say, maybe a year, maybe 14 months, up to 9 tanks. And some big tanks. I mean, what does that add up to? I used to know the number off the top of my head, like 400 gallons or something, 400 gallons of water, 500 maybe. And it's all evaporating. And yeah, so that was our first run-in with that. It was a finished basement, but we never had any problems with mold because we caught it in time. So we put fans on all the windows. All the tanks had glass lids anyway, but because of the temperature, and it was in the basement, it's a little cooler down there, the air was always moist. So we cut back on tanks, and eventually we got her down to 3. Oh, hey, Ugly Man's Reefing. Glad to see you. JT Reefer. Oh, Brooke Reefriend's asking JT Reefer what size glass. Yeah, Marcus Arliss. Condensation mostly in the cold months. Yeah, very true.
And I've been watching my humidity over here, and like it's gone up a little bit, but it's just probably because of the time of year. Because when it got really cold outside and everything was so dry, I mean, the house was down to it's in 30s.
Yeah. And you have to watch your hardwood floors, because the ideal range for hardwood floors is, I think, between 45 and 55, something like that.
No, I don't have hardwood floors, so I don't have that problem.
Oh.
Vinyl.
We have vinyl in our bathroom, but that's just because the builder wanted an arm and a leg to put a heated tile floor in, and we just said, no, we'll go with the vinyl with the cork backing because it's warm on your feet and a little bit cushy, and it looks really nice. So we're very happy with that choice. But the rest of it is hardwood, and there's tile, of course, in the room I'm in. We elected to put hardwood in the kitchen as well because of where the division was between the hardwood and it just didn't look right to us to have the whole kitchen and eating area in tile, so we made it all wood. So we have to be careful with the humidity upstairs that it doesn't get too low, because then the wood starts to separate. It needs a certain level.
And my wife was she was asking for where we had a little humidifier for upstairs, and then she's like, oh, why didn't we pay to get a humidifier in this house when we bought it? And I was like, don't worry, we won't have that problem soon.
Nope. That's for sure.
I was like, trust me. I was like, we'll have the opposite problem.
Oh,
So-
hey, DC Reefer. Whoa, DC Reefer just got his tank on the stand. Took forever to get people to help because of COVID. Yeah, I bet. Nice to see you, DC. And JT Reefer says his glass is 8 by 2 by 3/4 of an inch thick. Oh, that's a nice proportion.
That's about the same size I had on my 480.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Don't-
370, that's fairly close. Well, that's still a big tank.
oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun to get those put together, and then when you build it yourself and you fill it up, and you're like, wow, I did that, and it didn't fail.
Yeah.
That's
So
the bigger sense of pride there, is that I built it, but it actually worked.
Exactly. And there's a lot to be learned, and I'm sure that a lot of thought and planning had to go into it before you even started, because and like you were talking about research. And that's the beauty, I guess, 20 years ago, it would have been a lot harder to find the information you would need to find and to learn of the experiences that people have had. And now we've got, Mr. Google and YouTube and the forums, and people taking the time and making the effort to document what they're doing and put it out there. And it just made so many things possible for people to do that 20 years ago there was just no way.
Yeah, and even when I researched my stuff on plywood tanks, like trying to figure out strength calculations and how they were doing things, like why they did something a certain way, that was always one of the challenges that I would look at, and I would be like, well, why did you do that? I mean, you say that it's going to make things stronger, but how is it exactly that it's going to do that? Because
yeah,
I don't think it is.
And how do you know that?
Yeah, and that's, I think my biggest lesson learned on the plywood tank, for anyone listening that's going to make them, is never have on edge plywood that's epoxied be in a really high moisture area. The top of my Euro brace was the one point on my 480 that had a moisture problem in the plywood, and that's because of that edge. Just grab a piece.
Safety factor +3, Marcus Orlis. That's true. So true.
There we go.
All right.
Never have this with pond armor on it exposed to the top or into high humidity. My top of my Euro brace had this edge, and the one part that failed, and it never caused a problem, and it wouldn't have damaged anything. It could have been repaired, but there was a little tiny hole somewhere, and it's probably because pond armor won't adhere to other glues. There's probably a tiny little pinhole in there, and the moisture got into the Euro brace on top of the plywood. So it never hurt the tank, and I had this elaborate plan to like route that whole thing out or chisel it out, and then basically make a form and shred up fiberglass and pond armor and mix it into a paste to just dump it into it. So
like a patch.
Yeah, I just never got to the point of actually doing it, because I was moving then, and I was like, well, I'm just tearing this down.
That's right.
So yeah, the new build though, I'll probably just use straight wood beams. Or if I was going to do a Euro brace again, I'd probably do glass, or just buy regular lumber and not do the plywood where the edge is exposed.
So I guess if you used glass, you could use the RTV stuff to glue it to the side. Yeah.
Yeah, it ain't gonna go anywhere.
That's great.
I literally, if I had the time and the resources for fun, I would take a sheet of glass, glue it to something with RTV 108, and like hang the thing upside down like a 200 or 300 pound piece of glass, like hang it upside down and like bungee the thing and be like, yeah, see, it does not fail.
Yeah. Yep.
The
You need
rope
to do-
broke. Oops.
You need
That's
to do
what would happen.
commercials. Yeah. So I guess down the road with BRS doing what they're doing, I don't know if you heard the last couple of days they had a video out yesterday, I guess, where they're going to expand, and one of the things they're going to be doing is traveling around, looking at people's tanks and doing videos and visiting with people. So yeah, it's we could see you on there, Alex, with your monster fish room and monster tank.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I was watching it, they had a live stream talking about Hawaiian fish, and that got brought up on there, and they're like, we're not just going to giant people's tanks, we're going to go to like regular people's tanks that are things
Right.
that,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, well, I wouldn't be able to extend an invite out for anybody for a long time. It's not built yet.
Anyway, yeah.
But
yeah.
It'll be very interesting. Like I'd heard that they brought some investors in, and it sounds like their business is doing really well for them. So,
well, you know, they're what they've set up in terms of education and their at least their YouTube content and what they have on their site. All of the investments they've made in that over the years, they've proven that that's what they're about. And to me, the fact that they're actually, I mean, they sell stuff. Of course they do. That's where their income comes from, to do all this stuff for us. And we support them by buying stuff from them, and they support us by giving us information and doing stuff that we don't have the resources to do, all of the testing and everything, you know. So I think it's gonna be great. I really do. Reefing with O just popped in the waiting room.
what? Now that's that. He popped into a stream yesterday, or onto a chat yesterday briefly, but he's coming on board. I haven't seen him on a live stream in months.
Yeah, he was on here last week. Actually, when we did the international one on Sunday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, let's bring him in.
That's how quickly everything goes now. I forget stuff.
Time is relative. Like, oh, how profound is that? But you know, it just disappears. The days just disappear. Hey, Seymour, what's up?
Hi, how quickly they forget, huh?
Quick.
Sorry. Oh, it must be all the gray in my beard that's making me forget, since I'm getting old.
I feel like I'm in a dungeon.
Well, you do look a little scary.
All right, I'm gonna see what I can do.
Alice Holbert here has said, Alex, plywood versus poured from cement. I don't understand how plywood holds water. Poly inside. I'm in construction. I can't fathom plywood holding water. Well, there you go, Alice. It's a good reason to check out Alex's videos.
Yeah, so the best way to think about it is, when you use the epoxy on the plywood, it turns it into plastic. No, I think, you're off mute,
Yeah.
No.
There we go. I fix it.
Yeah, the best way to think about it is, when you use a 2-part epoxy, just like wood glue or wood stain, that it gets absorbed into the wood, the epoxy does the same thing, and it like plastifies it. So once you get that layer built up, and then if you got corners or you just want more protection on it, you put fiberglass on top of that. It'll hold water back, no problem. It's just a barrier. That's all it is.
Yeah. And Broke Reef Man has one last question about glass. Is it tempered?
I have not used tempered glass before. When I went to my 720, or now 700, that tank's 3/4 inch standard plate, or low iron glass plate on this one. I've never worked with tempered very much, other than to try and break a sheet of it when I was moving. And it'll take quite a bit. If you go over 36 inches tall and you want to go glass, you can go up to 48 inches tall with 3/4 inch thick tempered. But I've never worked with it, and I've talked to some people that they say you've got to be very careful with it because on the front ends of it, it could take a really, like you could hit it up with a hammer almost. It won't do anything. But if you hit it on an edge, it might shatter the whole thing. So I was like, Plus, you can't drill it or cut it. The second you try to do any of those things, it will shatter. And again, I've only heard it. The tempering process, it sometimes will cause distortions in the glass.
Interesting.
That's way over my head.
We can see it now. You don't look like you're in a dungeon.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of messing with the tanks again. So.
Yeah. So what have you been doing this week with it? With them? Well, here, I'll give you a minute to think about it. And have you been watching from the start? Did you see the new wave maker I put in today?
I did not.
I'll show you.
That's
You're going to love
fancy.
this. It is. And I don't know, you'll probably say it's too noisy, but like the amount of water that it moves is amazing.
Yeah. Might be lost with the noise thing. He likes a quiet tank, but I don't know. He might
I'll
like
see
it.
what you think. But we tried it out in the 100, and it's called. This is the name of it. Where did I put that now?
Let me just say this. I like a quiet tank because it's in my living room.
Yeah, very much so. But it's the new E-less Wavestream 100, right? So I will show you, and everybody else who hasn't seen this is pretty cool. Okay, this was today's test.
What do you think of Grandma's setup? Yeah, you like it? Good job?
Okay. I did
You weren't
not expect
expecting
that. No, I was not. I was expecting like something crazy. I started Googling the company, and it took like about 5 seconds to sink in. I'm like, is she playing the wrong video? And then I realized what was going on. I was like, oh.
But did you see the water moving?
Yeah, you know what? You can't beat that.
No.
SPS love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you might have noticed there's no water actually coming out the pipes. We isolated that tank just in case of any untoward accidents from the 1-year-old baby. He loved it. He actually really liked it.
I can see that. He was enjoying it. That was good. That was good.
Was all ready. He was Googling.
Yeah, I'm like, never heard of that. Is that it doesn't, I'm like, it doesn't seem like one of those Taiwanese or some company. I'm like, okay, it's cool. Maybe Australian.
Was the perfect mark for you because he's like one of the biggest gear guys I know.
You know, right? Yeah, the baby's name is Ellis. So that's why my daughter said this is the E-less Wavestream. So that's what we're going to call it.
It was a good setup. Your pacing was perfect. It was like, did you see it? Did you watch the stream? And I was like, oh. And I was so excited. And, and then, you know what? Alex and I had a conversation about wave makers, like a long conversation a couple weeks ago about custom wave makers. So I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, this is something Alex recommended. So, I got to see this. So I think there's some background stories that just, It was good.
I kind of figured that might play into it too. That's why I was like, oh yeah, it's not quiet, but you might like it.
That's right. Lots of feedback. Yeah, DC Reefer, if your skimmer goes crazy, then we know why.
Oh,
No, we made sure we took care of all of that before. That was
Yeah.
actually a swimsuit he had on, like a two-piece swimsuit. Yeah, child labor laws. I was kind of wondering if people would go, "Oh my God, you're a terrible grandmother putting
No,
your grandson in your aquarium."
he's
put
gonna
him in a
love that
tub of
tank.
water. He's all right.
Oh yeah, yeah. The kid loves the water. Well, and obviously when we get the glass in here, he's going in. I mean, once everything's set up, we'll put him in there to crawl around and go all crazy. But anyway,
That was a good one.
yeah,
That was a good one.
yeah, we had a little fun with that.
That was a good one. I need. All right.
Since you weren't here,
The water. He's filled it.
Oh, that tank has water now.
yep.
Is that connected to the main fish system?
No.
Not the main fish system. I mean, like the temporary fish system.
No. This has just got RODI in it, so the plan will be to get. Well, the 700 will be ready next week for the start of its filling. The 150 is going to be ready this week. And then I'm supposed to get the glass for the 400 next week, maybe. And so once the glass is installed in that 400, it's going to be 2 weeks to cure. And then once I have it filled and running and everything's got fresh water and it's running, I'm going to do an ICP test and send it in with the fresh water. Make sure that they don't have anything sneaking up in me in my water. And then if all is good there, I'm going to add salt, which is probably going to take a while. So I'll add salt in. Once the salt's mixed up, I'll go ahead, let it run for a day or two, and then the temp tank is going to get torn down and everything's going to go under the 400.
I mean, this is the second time I was listening to your conversation, and I was actually, this is the second time I'm watching you do this. So it's almost like I'm not worried. I'm just waiting to see what cool thing you did. I remember I was on that stream when the King of DIY came on and you were asking him about Boeing. And he was looking at the tank and I don't remember, like that stuff was all over my head because that stream, I was still amazed that you can build tanks out of wood. Like I didn't, and when he said plywood, I'm thinking plywood that you use to like wall. So I still don't like Alex has explained it to me many times. I'm pretty sure he's going to explain it to me many times in private conversations. I still don't get it. I kind of backed off when he said, "Hey, what do you think boats are made out of?" I'm like, "Oh, wood." So I guess.
Well, wood floats.
Yeah, so I stopped asking questions like
Until it sinks.
Until it sinks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so I guess I don't get it.
Like really, it was the Boeing that I wondered about the most when it came to it, because there's nothing that's like it, that wood just can't be rigid enough. It's flexible, whatever. So that's what I always wondered. And I've learned with doing my rock cooking in the totes, that nice rectangular Rubbermaid, roughneck totes become round when you put rocks and lots of water in them, especially if you have a heater. Even if it's only 78 degrees, they become round, and there's nothing much you can do about it unless you put them inside something that's rigid enough to hold them. So I just let them go round, and I'm careful when I put the water in, because the last thing I want is for the stress on the plastic to break it. And once we're done with the rock cooking, I'm just getting rid of them, because I don't know that I'll ever be able to get them back in the right shape to fit the lid back on. So, yeah.
You're reminding me of, I have a storage locker, and you're just reminding me of like, these plastic containers I bought at Target, and they just bow too. And you're correct, you never get them back to the original shape, no matter what you do. I've tried bracing them with these industrial zip ties, and at the end of the day, you just replace them and just get like more rigid, heavier. When you're lifting something, from a storage locker, you want it to be as light. So I just got more industrial, heavy duty, heavier that don't bow. But
and I remember when, like decades ago, we were talking about furniture. For example, behind me, you can see my little alcove, and I've space for a cabinet, like a little shelf thing beside my laundry sink. And when we were first married in the 70s, if you wanted to buy just a melamine shelf, those things were really, really expensive. And we're always looking for used or bargains, because we didn't have much money back then, and we needed storage and organization and whatever. And nowadays, it's like the cheapest thing that there is. Like, and same with plastic containers. Those were the days when it would be $30 for a tote, and now they're like $8.99. It just blows my mind.
It's with everything. We all want cheaper. My mother-in-law gave me a table, and I think that's one of the reasons I got storage, because stuff isn't built like that anymore. And I don't have space for it now, but I need to save it. Like just one of the legs, when it's 3 feet legs, but when like I have to hold it, that's how heavy one leg is. Imagine the table.
Well,
I know what you mean.
It's funny to say that, because they do still make it that way. It's just so unobtainable a lot of times, because it's like, that old school furniture, it's like you have a piece of that's built solid like that. If you go to a store that actually like sells that stuff, it's ridiculous what they want for it. You look at it and you're like, wait, that table's $10,000? What's it made out of? Oh, it's made out of real wood. Oh,
the new stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take the IKEA special for $200. Thank you.
See, when people don't understand about IKEA is that they also have levels of quality within their line. And the high-end IKEA stuff is very good furniture. Sure, it's not solid wood always, but a lot of times some of it is. And they have soft closed drawers and really nice finishes. And you can't beat a Billy bookcase with glass doors for your fish room. Let me tell you, those 2 white cabinets that I had, love those things. They're in the basement now. We discovered there's not going to be room in this room to use either of them. But and they were like under $300 Canadian. So that's like $1.99 US, right? For 6 or 7 foot tall bookshelves with glass doors that look really nice.
Yeah, that you can't knock I can't count the number of IKEA pieces of furniture I've assembled or
they have the garbage
disassembled in a more violent manner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sledgehammer out for this thing. We gotta throw it away.
They have their cheap stuff, and you spill water on it, and it soaks in. Yeah,
but it's like you said though. You can buy some really nice looking stuff for a very good deal, and that's the hard part with all this stuff now. It's same thing with aquarium furniture and stuff. Some people want the, get a solid oak stand. Be like, okay, well, hope you want to spend more on that stand and canopy than you do the tank.
So I go with steel. I like the idea of a steel stand, and then you kind of skin it in your own wood, because as you redecorate, you can then you can always just spruce things up.
Yeah. My stand's going to be steel, and it'll be powder coated. I won't have a skin on it because I'll have panels on each pane that will be like a platform. So it depends if he designs it so the steps fold up, I'll probably put something on the bottom that kind of looks tidy. instead of seeing the steel tubes under the diamond plate, like it'll, but if they fold down, then I'll just have a nice diamond plate skirt around the bottom, and it's going to be completely open underneath. I'm not going to stick things under there. I'm resisting the urge to store my yarn under there. You're going to walk in the room and just see this open, that's
You're
what I
saving this
want.
recording, right?
Yeah. We've already had this talk. I have a lot of yarn, like a lot of yarn. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought about a steel stand for my display. The only problem is that it would have to be welded in place down here, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Alice Holbert says those steel stands with doors on magnets are cool. Yeah, I agree.
They are cool. I just
Very
like the
nice.
idea of not being, you redecorate, do your furniture, then you can just get a carpenter or cabinet maker to just make you. I've seen people do like them with stone finish where you have the tank and then, even my tank now, I got the black and I should have gotten white because then, salt creep doesn't show as much on. So, it would have
I
been.
know, that's why I want white. That's what the Red Sea was white, and that's exactly why. Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, having the last tanks white, that was one thing. I never really thought about the salt creep thing, but
Oh,
Yeah,
when
you
you
have to
looked
wipe
at
it.
when you looked at my Red Sea tank from the right angle, oh man, like the lines going down it from the water dripping, right? You think you wipe them all up and there's smears everywhere, but when you look in the room, it's like, whoa, like it looks really nice because it's white. And if anybody ever said, should I get a white or a black? I would say,
White.
well, it depends. If you get a black stand and it bothers you to have smudges and ugly all over it, you're going to want white.
I
You,
guess
you might want black. All my furniture in my living room is black, but even now, I would have gotten the white. It's just easier to clean. It would make the tank stand out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I would go white. I don't think I care what furniture or what layout is in the room. I would always go white. It's just less maintenance. I'm not saying you're not going to clean it, but you don't have to clean every smudge, everything. When you wipe, like you said, you today, like it's a triple step process to clean because you had salt creep, so you have to get a moist rag to clean it, and then that leaves a whole different thing. Then you have to come in and polish, and then you need to get like furniture cleaner, then to do the final polishing. So it's a 3-step process instead of just you just wipe it.
Yeah, exactly.
well, furniture cleaner. That sounds like it could kill corals. No thanks.
You have to because if you just wipe, you just leave or you push the salt creep around. So there needs to be a final polishing.
RODI water and vinegar.
Yeah,
and you know what? If you dry it with a paper towel, for some reason, paper towel will not leave streaks after salt water. Whereas a tea towel or cotton or whatever, I always get streaks, but paper towel just seems to keep it really, like, I don't know what it is. Well, you know how they used to clean windows with newspaper? I don't know if you youngins out there know what newspaper is, but.
But my first local fish store I worked at, all the glass cleaning we did was with newspaper.
Yeah. Newspaper.
And I read a story about a guy who, had a window cleaning business, and when he had this formula, and when he sold the business, when he retired, it turns out his secret was just vinegar, water, and newspaper. Yep. I you know what? We did that in Jamaica growing up, but I thought it was just because newspaper was plentiful. The guy delivered newspaper every day, so we just had newspaper all around. Now I'm seeing okay, cleaning the windows. When my parents told me to clean it with newspaper, was because it worked.
You know what I kind of wonder? Because you know how they use vegetable inks now instead of carbon-based inks? I wonder if it's the same. Because you know how newspapers used to make your hands black? They don't really do that anymore because of the vegetable inks they use. So I wonder if it was a little bit of the carbon in the ink that used to, I don't know.
I haven't touched a newspaper in 10 years, so.
I know.
Exactly.
I know. I used to buy the newspaper every day, and
Yep, me too. You know what my problem is though? I have to read it cover to cover. I have to read every page of the news. I can't just if I used to have a newspaper subscription and I kid you not, they would pile up because there's no way I could discard them until I read every page cover to cover. It's almost like an OCD for me. So I don't do that anymore. And yeah. So, have you had time to think about what you've been doing with your tanks this week?
so I think so. So okay, let's start with tonight. So I think tonight I have that little 10-gallon NEM tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a 10-gallon. I think it's 12 by 12 by 12, and that tank has really bad algae. Not an algae outbreak, but I think maybe because I had like an XR50 and G5 on it on a 10-gallon tank. So I kind of changed that to an AI prime tonight, where it's a lot less light. Should be less light hitting the glass. Yeah. So should be less algae.
Oh, cool. So do you think it'll change how your NEMs are growing to sort of match the colors in the other tank?
I think, you know what? I don't know. I don't think it matters because you know what I've realized with my NEMs? There is, when you put the NEMs react to light, flow, conditions in a tank, in an individual tank. I have 2 NEMs in my main display, and whatever is it in the main display, they have a completely different color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were showing us that with the beautiful green inside and everything.
Yes, and then in my NEM tank, it has a beautiful color, but it's not the same. When I take them to, like I took them to my local fish store, he's using AI, but the really old like soles, they have a completely different color.
Yeah.
So the reason I put the XR15 on that tank was to try to get the same colors that I got in the main display. It's not happening. The NEMs are healthy, so I think I want to go for just less maintenance, less light hitting the glass, less maintenance. Yeah. So that was my project today. I think 3 days ago I hooked up my I think I hooked up my Chaeto reactor, or was that last week? I have a Pax Bellum that I wasn't using. So
you mentioned that last week that you weren't using it, so you did get that.
So I hooked it up. I didn't realize, so I put it next to my tank. I didn't realize how much light it gives out. So now I am in the process of taking black electric tape and blocking it out. So, because it's sitting right next to the tank. So when it comes on at 10 p.m., the light, I don't think it looks like daylight in my living room. So I need to go back to the hardware store. So it's going to be a Pax Bellum, which is a nice reactor, but it's going to look ugly because there's going to be electric tape all over it. But I don't have.
So, go to the dollar store or Dollar Tree or whatever you guys have there.
We have everything here.
You can get Bristol board. You can get black Bristol board, which is like a thicker cardboard. Like, do your kids ever use construction paper?
Yep.
So it comes in colors. Well, Bristol board is like, it has kind of a satin finish. For about $1, you can get like a 20 by 24 piece sheet of it. And just make a circle, like a cylinder, and you could put it around your Pax Bellum and make like a little shield for it.
You know what?
Maybe.
You know what? I think the first version of the Pax Bellum I ever had was clear, and they gave you like something like what you described, except the inside was highly reflective, and then it had a little piece of magnet, so I could probably do something like that. Good. You know what?
The benefit of the reflection of the light. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's reflective inside. It's just that it has, they've etched out like the logo and wording. Okay, so that was the second project. I think I also took out my sand, which I think I'm just looking to make my aquarium a little bit easier to maintain. I've seen my friends do it and I'm intrigued by it. I started when I restarted my. Alex is laughing because he knows this. When I restarted my aquarium last year, I had no sand, hated it. Put the sand in, and now 6 months later, I'm taking the sand out again. Um, the corals are pissed off because I
Mhm.
can tell from the trident that you could just tell alkalinity consumption went down to like nothing immediately.
Yeah.
But for sand that's only been in the tank for 6 months, I'm surprised how dirty it is. Like that thing, I tried to wash it. My thinking was, hey, wash it. And just in case you change your mind again, you don't throw it out. I think I ran water in that thing for like a half an hour and it was still black.
Mhm.
So I don't understand how 6 months of being in an aquarium takes something. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to throw it out. I
Well, I
don't think you
guess
can.
like the 47 fish in the giant naso tang. Tangs, they're like ounce for ounce, they probably have the most poop of any fish because they're herbivores, right?
Have you ever seen a Nassau? It's like a B-52 bomber, just like spraying
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
they are.
Yeah, I'm looking
Um,
forward to getting one. I'm
You know,
getting one because with the red lips, because that's with the grandson, it's going to be the lipstick fish. Yeah.
see now the one thing, and this would be my thing always, is that just imagine taking a quarter teaspoon of that sand out from the sand bed and tossing it under a microscope and all the microfauna that's living in that. Even though it's dirty and it looks awful, it's a huge area for lots of life to form up and help feed things naturally.
I kept some of it. I put some Tupperware and put some of it in the back. And a friend of mine, Woody's Reef, convinced me to put. So I have some Tupperware containers in my sump where I saved some of it.
Mhm.
When I started washing, put water in it. I'm surprised by the amount of like bristle. I didn't even know I had bristleworms, but copepod. I never saw pods walking around. But once I put fresh water in it started to wash it, the amount of pods and bristleworms and little things that started
Oh,
coming out.
so you
Um,
you didn't rinse it in salt water? Oh, because
no,
you weren't going to use it. Okay.
no.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
but I did keep some of it. I think I have enough biological filtration to not upset the tank too much. And I'm seeing the alkalinity consumption again go up.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's another thing I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys think? I'm debating because there's sand in the holding tank. It's a 90-gallon. There's 3 bags of sand in there. And it's been running for 8 months. So the sand isn't disgusting. It's not really even dirty. And I have the green wrasse, and he regularly goes through it and spits it out all over the place. And I'm debating when I take that tank down to remove that sand and put it in the shallow 50 that's at the top of my sump. Right now in there, I have about 8 bags of the Sea Chem Matrix. It's brand new. I just bagged it up and I laid it all over the bottom. And I also put a whole bunch of Siperax that was in the one canister filter in there, well seated, along with one of the sponges from the top layer of the sun canister. And it was disgusting. It had so much nasty crud on it. So I put all of that in there to help seed the tank and get the cycle going so that um, I just felt it was the best way to do it because it's already aged media. So what do you think if I took the sand and put it up in that section? Because the flow in it is low. It's not like it's going to get stirred up in a sandstorm and go down the overflow. But I don't want to cause myself problems with detritus. Like the green trash can will have an egg crate that's cut to fit. There's a ledge around it, and it'll be cut to fit, and that's going to have filter floss on it. And when the pipes come down from the tank, that's where the water will land. The water level itself is about a foot below that, so the water will percolate through the filter media and land in the water below, and then exit out the 2 lock line things that I've got on the outside. So I don't know if I'd be causing myself trouble by putting sand in that upper section. Like
How deep would the sand be?
probably, I would say around an inch, maybe an inch and a half.
I would
Certainly no more
say,
than that.
and it's a 50, right?
Yep, shallow 50. But I mean, some of it's taken up by the trash can, the bottom of the trash can.
I always think, from what I see with nanotech, I think tanks with sand just mature faster. You get less. I don't know if it's the surface area. That's what I see from BRS.
Mhm.
To be honest, I love the look of sand.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just looking to make my aquarium life just easier. That's why I took it out. But I love sand.
To
But
keep
from
it
what,
cleaner. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I get you.
for what my friends who, like I said, my friend took his sand out, but he's just put it in a section. His sump has an isolated section,
Hmm.
and he just put it in his sump, and he still has the benefit of the microfauna, the everything.
Yeah.
I think he's not like running full filtration, full mechanical filtration. It's like
Hmm.
partially open. So I
Hmm.
still think when you look in there, he sees a lot of bugs and everything running around.
Hmm.
So I think he still has the benefits without
Yeah.
having like his display sand, because he's a very hands-off reefer. He just not that he wants a tank to run on autopilot, but he doesn't ever want to clean sand, and I don't
Hmm.
think I ever want to. I always say I'm going to do it, and then I end up never doing it.
Yeah.
And so I would say that, because like, well, with my sand beds, I've never really like cleaned them. Like I'd stir a little bit, but I relied on all the animals I got in there to deal with it. So if
Yeah.
it's a 50, I would say a handful of Nazareth snails
Hmm.
to go in it, and they'll clean up any big stuff that comes in there, and they'll help do a little stirring. And then maybe like one small tiger tail cucumber.
Right. That will soon become 20 big tiger tail cucumbers.
Well, you could take them back to the local fish store.
That's
They
right.
will. They will accept them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Captive. They will be captive.
Hmm. See, and
Asexually split then. So
I wasn't even thinking about putting cleanup crew in there, but that is a really good idea because they'd be protected from getting harassed and eaten by the green rat. Well, I'm not going to have the green wrasse anymore.
yeah,
It's going bye-bye to the fish store.
it would give you an extra level of
Mhm.
cleanup in that particular area, especially with it not being. Once you get beyond a couple inches, it gets more challenging for those cleanup crews to deal with it.
Yeah.
But at that size, I'd say some Nazareth snails. They'll take anything that's actively coming down there, which is always going to be something. And then a sea cucumber, like one in something that size, it'll
Mhm.
start working through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because
when
I
the
could
time
just spread it around the media bags, and it could just act as the whole biological area. It'll be the first stage after the mechanical filtration, the floss. So whatever's like uh, as far as nutrients go, will feed into there. So
Yeah, that stuff will have a ton of life in it at that area too.
yeah, yeah,
Pods, bugs. I kind of miss having a full-on refugium because just I used to sit on the floor and just stare at that stuff for hours.
yeah, yeah. Oh, me too. After
Yeah,
hours with a flashlight. Oh yeah, magnifying glass.
yeah, that's one of the things. See, there used to be a lot of discussion around Miracle Mud, but I think
Hmm.
that's one of the things I did like Miracle Mud for is whenever I don't know if it's the particle size or what it was, but whenever I used that as a refugium substrate, it was always,
Hmm.
um, you know, teeming with life.
Yeah.
It was then a pain if you needed to. After I just never bothered changing it. You're supposed to
Hmm.
change, but it got so messy changing it, so I just left it. I
Yeah.
said, hey, if it does any trace elements, that's minor, but
Hmm.
yeah, you would get pods. On my Red Sea Reefer came with, a Red Sea Reefer comes with that little
ATO. Yeah.
ATO. I plumbed that and turned that into a refugium, and I was able to support a pair of mandarins in my tank,
Nice.
with just whatever, I would let it drain right into the return section.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I I was thinking of doing a video the other day, and I started pulling up videos of, just since I had the Red Sea, how many versions of the sump I've done.
Mhm.
I think I'm up to 42 versions of like just different things. Like, and I'm like, wow, like you're crazy. I said that to myself, like,
You know what though? Is that change that's just it's another part of the hobby, you know. If you gotta always try changing things up, I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm kind of the opposite. I want to look for a solution that I can put in place and just let it do its thing. And I mean, it sounds crazy, but I was probably in my mid 20s before I realized that when you plant a garden, there's maintenance. You know, I always thought, oh, I'll put all these nice flowers in, and oh no, like you're not done. So a reef tank is like that. You're never done. You're
yeah,
always doing something, and you have to tend your garden. And that's kind of how I think of it. Except it's a lot easier and much less wheelbarrows of dirt you got to move from one spot to another. But I guess it has its own thing, right?
mm-hmm. Are you going sand in both tanks, right, Alex?
So I am going to I'm going to take the sand that I got. I'm going to wash it, which is going to be a really fun process since it was basically live sand tossed into a bucket and sealed up for 6-8 months.
I don't think I want to open that. You can't open that inside.
But he's got to do it before the summer gets too hot, because otherwise it'll start to
Although
generate gases and blow the lids off.
That'll be an outdoor activity for sure.
You know what? Since it's cold, now might be the time to do it, because then you leave it outside. It's cold. It won't smell as bad. If you try to do this in the middle of summer.
What fun is that? Oh, I mean.
That's how to get to know your neighbors, right? Kind of like we got to know the Russian spies across the road when my 60-pound boxes of sand and rocks got delivered to their place instead of our place.
Ooh.
So
by FedEx, yeah.
I am going to leave the fish section bare bottom likely, with maybe some areas with trays concealed with rocks for any kind of wrasses that like to bury themselves. And then in the reef tank, I'm going to have the bottom tiled, but getting more into the softy and LPS sections, I'm going to put sand in there because the flow won't be bad. But the SPS section, there will be way too much flow for there to be sand.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I crank up.
Hybrid.
I love my flow now, and I crank it up, and the sand even though I did the Carib Sea special grade, which is somewhat heavy, the minute you start cranking up the flow, the SPS love it.
Yeah.
It just
got to go to crushed coral to hold it back, and even that, and a lot that's it still doesn't look too bad, but yeah, it's not the same as special grade though. That's the size.
Yeah. Did I show you guys the video yet of my Miyagi tort that's in the 90? Where I had a bunch of
the polyps were sticking way out.
Crazy stupid.
And I'm sorry, but when you're showing videos now, I'm a little bit skeptical now. So I'm sorry. So I'm going to look at this like a little bit side eye.
Okay. Well, first I'll show you. Well, in that case, first I'll show you the very, very important work that got done in the fish room here over the last couple of days. And like, this is the stuff that you can't do anything unless you do this first, right? We did the decorating.
Oh,
we got the shells on the wall.
I can't allow my wife to see this photo. She's going to be like, why don't you make your fish room look pretty?
I just love my shells, but those pieces of metal are galvanized, and I'm going to use my magnetic bars on there.
Is that your like work sink in the fish room?
It is. That's supposed to be a closet, because this is a bedroom, or was. And so we said, don't make it a closet, make it an alcove. So because they didn't have to frame it in as a closet, we were able to have a light installed in the ceiling and a plug installed. You can see it on the right there. There's a light switch and a plug right there. So I need a little cabinet beside it, but the metal on the left is for my tools. I've got magnetic rails, so I can hang all my tweezers and everything.
You're making everyone look bad now because it's
Yeah. Yeah, let's see Alex G's fancy setup here. Oh wow.
I know. I didn't realize that was your. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm sitting in, like where I'm sitting right now, that will be the front corner of the tank in this room. Yeah.
You know what? You don't have though, Cindy. You don't have a Home Depot bucket for the sink.
No, I don't.
You don't have that.
That's very true.
Wait,
Yeah.
what's that?
This is clever.
So instead of doing a U-trap for the sink, I made it into a 5-gallon bucket so that if sand or pieces of coral frags or heavy objects go down the sink, they don't wind up into my extractor pit pump. They follow the bucket.
Yeah.
So that's the water still goes down and then goes up?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a. Hold on, let me find my flashlight here.
We're going to walk 500 feet of pipe.
Wow.
I just gotta find my flashlight.
So yeah, I'll show you the video of my polyp extension. This is serious though. This is Miyagi tort. Color's not great because the lighting is not what it should be.
Ooh.
Yep. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay.
I noticed that the other day, and I do have a frag of it that was a 1/4-inch nub that broke off, and it's now completely encrusted, and it's about 1 inch tall. So I do have something to start with. That whole area that is in was a complete colony of Miyagi tort. And when I had the fish death episode and I used ammo lock, I know I should have read about it first, and yeah, big mistake. So a lot of the SPS in there died, but this one is coming back in patches. So I'm glad I just left it there.
Speaking of ammo lock, I know it's not the same, but did you see what happened to Reef Bum Keith?
Yes, I saw that. Oh my God, he siphoned. What was it? Was it Nopox?
Oh
no, it was
nitrate.
potassium nitrate. Oh yeah.
1,000 milliliters. He had the dosing containers above, higher. So it started a siphon, and I think he said he went for a run or went out for a couple hours, came back, and his fish were jumping out the tank and everything.
Yeah.
So 1 liter of potassium nitrate basically siphoned into the tank over the course of a couple of hours.
Yeah, and that's a 270 Peninsula. Just such a shame. But hey, look, it happens. Like it's one of those, like, hindsight is great, but did you find your flashlight, Alex?
Yes, I did. So, all right, let me backlight this thing so you can see the water line there. So each one of these bulkheads has a tube extending down to about this water line. So when the water comes in, this air gap stays here, and it just drains down here, falls into the trap just like a normal trap, and then it goes up into this line.
Okay.
So
if you have to take that apart to empty it, how do you get the water balanced again so that it automatically goes out the other pipe, or does that happen?
It'll happen on its own because the bucket's sealed.
Oh, and because the pipes go down, right? Cool.
Yeah, so the pipes are leveled off, so it'll act just like a normal trap will, and because those tubes extend into the bucket, any air bubbles that go down the drain, they basically get caught there, and it auto levels the bucket down to that way, so that when I pull it off, it's not completely full, it's partially full.
Okay. You should paint that. You should paint that, Alex, so it matches the PVC.
That's a lot of work.
Hey, Fletcher Wright, welcome.
I've given up on painting. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't want to.
Must be a guy thing because that's what my husband said about the plumbing in my sump. It's all white. It's fine. I'm fine with it being white. And he was talking about, oh, I can get this color and that color, or we could paint it to match the bright green trash can. And yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure I will be getting that question, because someone's going to be like, oh, why didn't you do like neon orange Schedule 80 pipe? And I'd be like, well, you want to buy 50 feet of that at, whatever ridiculous price it's at,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah,
I'll install it.
not to mention the bulkheads and the fittings you need for that are like 5 times the price. When we were looking at gathering all the plumbing together, there was one place where we thought we might have to go with the Schedule 80 because we couldn't get the size. But eventually we did find it. But yeah. Hey, Ugly Man's Reefing. Oh, sorry.
If you're doing like a really small plumbing, like your sump is right below your tank, then I think it'll look nice. But once you're doing a long run, I think it just gets ridiculously expensive.
You're just showing off now, Alex.
Yeah, the 2-inch valves for my drain on the frag tank.
I know I had 1.5 inch doubled with like true unions that are connecting the 150 with the first 100 and then the first 100 with the second 100. And we put them in such a position that I can, because they're both, I reach down to turn them, I can use both hands. Because I would never be able to turn those valves just with one hand if they were like up on a wall or like vertical or somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah, and I got those because the frag tank is going to drain into 250-gallon water storage tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So those valves, I'm going to have a set of valves on there that'll allow me to divert the water to those tanks or bypass them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I want to do a water change, I could do it in those 250s.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, ATF in the house. Glad you could make it. Yes, Lock is freshwater only. Well, on the container, it says you can use it in salt, but I should have done some reading first. My bad. Yeah. Robert Corman, so sad to watch Mark Levinson stream. What's happening?
Oh, his girlfriend died.
Oh no, that's awful.
And she died like a few hours after she was streaming with him.
Wow.
So, to be honest, I usually watch Mark, and I could not watch the stream when it popped up today. So
yeah.
I didn't even attempt to.
Yeah.
I
find there aren't a lot of streams that I catch anymore live just because of the way things are. That's terrible.
I usually put him on. Sometimes I'll catch him live, but I will, when I'm working, I'll put him on in the background. But I just could not watch. I just knew it was going to be tough. This is the first one after. So, I saw the notification and I didn't even bother turning it on. It was going to be tough to watch.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, these, this kind of stuff happens, and all you can do is just sympathize with a guy, like how your life changes in an instant.
I kind of really wanted to watch his stream today also because he's in Texas. And, with the power outages, I wanted to see how he got through that. And I think part of the stream was about that. But again, it was going to be a tough watch.
Yeah. We have a question. Cindy, when are you setting up the new aquarium? Well, I was saying earlier that I heard today or yesterday, the guy who's making it is waiting on the glass to be polished. So we're at that stage, and he's waiting for the stand to come back. So my thinking is once he gets the glass and the stand, I don't know what modifications he has to do to the stand. If he's installing the platforms, like the fold up or down walkway, or if it's going to arrive back that way, I'm not sure. And then once he gets the glass, I'm assuming that's when he'll start putting everything together. So who knows? I was getting a little concerned that it was just going to show up at my house one day because it's been like 6 weeks since I paid for it, because this was the week I was thinking, oh, if his build time is 6 weeks, I will be getting it this week. I don't mind waiting. I'm not trying in any way to rush the guy. I would rather get the right kind of job. When it arrives, it arrives. I really don't want to push, but it would be useful to have a time frame, because I need to book an aquarium moving crew that I'm going to be talking to in order to get it from the garage into the house, because the DHL will apparently bring it and drop it at my house. I don't have to, it's not like FOB Calgary, that's where it's coming from. And we're hoping that they'll forklift it into the garage so that I can then arrange to have it unpacked and brought in by professionals, right? And set up. And then once that's done, the plumbing and everything should be done in very quick order. And the other thing is, the other news is, I guess I haven't told you guys yet, I'm not getting Deltec pumps or skimmer, because for whatever reason, they are unable or unwilling or too busy to set up an account with my local fish store who wants to sell their stuff.
Jeez.
So there's been a problem there. And my sort of looking, like talking back and forth with my fish store guy, it doesn't sound like they really want to bother with Canada. And we no longer have the option of ordering from the States and going across the border to pick it up. If the border was open, I would have gone over to get it.
I don't think you can. So Deltec has had like a really interesting history here in the US, because at one point recently, I was excited that they had come back to the US and Marine Depot and all of a sudden it left Marine Depot and then it went online only again. Deltec Direct USA. So something happened. I'm not sure. At least with Marine Depot, like, hey, I can call Marine Depot to get warranty, have questions, but it's some Deltec Direct USA website now. Yeah, but Deltec has had I don't know about Canada, but in the US, the only reason why they had a good reputation again recently was because Marine Depot, in 2017.
Or Adam at Battle Corals. That's who I got my skimmer from. And he has the full line apparently. And he was great to deal with, very responsive, very like communicating on a regular basis. There was a delay in shipping and he told me about it right away. I didn't have to spend 2 weeks wondering what was going on and then follow up 3 times, So instead, I'm getting an Aqua Vitro Division 500 skimmer, which has the internal recirculating. And it's about a third the price that I was going to have to pay for the Deltec 3000i.
Okay.
And it's relatively new. The fish store guy says he's heard really good things about it, and I'm up for trying something new for under $500 for a skimmer that's rated for 500 to 700 gallons. I'll try it. Do a review, do a video and all that kind of thing. And I'll be getting Seachi SDC 9.0 return pumps, a pair. They're going to be mounted externally. And that's how we're going to run, because they're controllable. And so I'm kind of disappointed that as much as I love Deltec, I can't use it if I can't get it. And I am not going to pay. I'm sorry. They would have shipped to me, but it was going to cost me between $250 and $300 US to ship 3 pieces of equipment. That is outrageous. There's no way it should cost that much. So anyway, I'm looking forward to getting these pumps. Well, I was kind of half expecting it when it took 2 weeks to even get the first response.
That's always something that always worries me too. Like, go to get equipment and like skimmers generally you don't have to worry about parts or anything on those too much. But that was the one thing that I think was one of the turnoffs when I was looking at calcium reactors and at the Stocko. I was looking at them and then I said, no, I go, if something breaks on that thing, how am I going to get parts?
Yeah.
I think Joe Capare is it Capar? Yeah, Joe Unicorals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the U.S. distributor, and I know he can get stuff, but it was almost like if I ordered one, I was going to order parts with it to have.
I see what you mean.
Mhm.
And you have me thinking that, you know what, a calcium reactor is one of those things where if you're running it for 10 years, you probably won't you probably only need a part one time. But when you need that part, you really need it.
Mhm.
And did you see, was it Oh Too Many Fish or someone recently, his Destaco broke and
Yeah,
he
he
rigged
fixed
the
it
little thing?
himself. Yeah.
Yes. You know what? Yeah, you're right. And if he didn't, I don't have that. You know what? You put a good thought. I never thought of that before. Because yeah, if he didn't have the know it to fix it and actually rig something custom up, he probably would have been,
Yeah.
SOL. Especially a big system like that, you'd have to use like a gallon of two part every day in order to maintain any kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how is that going to shock everything? Because now you're changing how you're dosing stuff, even though it's still bicarbonate alkalinity. It's always a little different.
You know what?
Yeah. If you were going to switch, you would do it gradually.
Can't do that if it's broke.
No, exactly. Well, hey, Snowman, Canada's a third world country. Haha, joking. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen Snowman before. Anyway, yeah, it's so many things to think of, and it's actually easier in this country for me to bring things in from Europe. And cheaper. And Australia, my coral essentials. It's going to be time to reorder those pretty soon. And it's going to be cheaper for me to bring them in direct from Australia than to go through Blue Life in the US.
It's not cheaper for you to buy stuff here?
In the US?
Yes.
No, the thing about the US is availability. You guys have way more to choose from. And that's why I set up my US shipping address, and I bought a lot of stuff from Premium Aquatics and BRS and a couple other companies, and Doctors Foster and Smith when they were still around. And then I would just cross the border and pick up the parcels. And that's how I did my skimmer. In fact, the skimmer was the very first thing I brought across, or in the very first shipment. And it's a $499 US skimmer, the 600i. And by the time I did the conversion for the Canadian dollar and the tax I had to pay on it, it's just shy of $700 Canadian. It cost me. So it's not cheaper. There's just more to choose from. Yeah.
And with the border situation right now, that's one of those things where I look at like the parts thing too, and I'm like, who would have ever thought we'd be in this situation?
For a year. It's been a year. Yeah. It's crazy.
I know.
Got a georeactor, 2 of them, spare parts just in case. You never know if the plastic PVC parts, 2 parts to battery backups, pumps, light, and chillers. But I do, yeah.
I think before that conversation what Alex just said about parts, I think I always looked at geo stuff and said, hey, you can get the parts anywhere, right? But now that's maybe not a negative. Maybe that's a positive, that if it breaks, you could just go get parts anywhere.
I was just thinking, I was like, I go to the hardware store and get most of this stuff and make it work.
Yeah. I always thought that, like, hey, there's nothing special. Like, you could just get the parts. But maybe that's a good thing. If it breaks, even if Geo's goes out of business, it's repairable by someone who just knows how to do PVC. So maybe that's not a.
The most expensive part of the reactor is the acrylic.
The chamber.
Yeah. That's
the amount of YouTube videos my husband has watched and learned from. It's all out there. Like, it really is. The stuff, he fixed our dryer about 4 or 5 years ago. When he first retired, it just stopped heating. So he looked inside it and he saw a little burnt something or other. So he started looking into it and he went, oh. So he ended up buying a special tool to remove solder. He bought the part. It came from Galveston, Texas. It cost us under $10 for the part. He did what he had to do, installed the part, because he does stained glass, so he knows how to solder, like really fine stuff. And it works again. He saved us $400 that it would have cost us to have a repairman come in and do that. So I'm telling you, and I mean, we bought him, well, we call it the bobatizer. I bought him 2 PVC ratchet cutters because we got one that's supposed to be big enough to cut 1.5 inches PVC, but it isn't. You need the one that's bigger than that to cut 1.5 inches. And so he's got 2 of them now. But now they were expensive, but now he's got the tools, right? So you do need to kind of acquire tools, but there's not much that he won't tackle now, unless it's electrical wiring and things like that. Like that's just, he knows that's beyond. And it's from watching YouTube and understanding that you can soon learn which guys don't know what they're talking about, that are just blowing smoke, just like reefing. You can tell when people don't know what they're talking about. And it's the same with what all the research he's been doing. And it's been great. Just,
like the cooking ones. Sometimes you could see someone will do a dish.
And
You'll
you
see
would know that.
And you can immediately tell, like, that is not like that.
Exactly.
That wouldn't fly on the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah, it's just not feasible.
And again,
I've learned.
Yeah, it's what is it? It's not cake. What the heck are they call it?
Flan?
No, it's
trifle. No,
the biscuit or why can I not think of it?
A sponge.
That's it, sponge.
Yeah, I watch a lot of British TV. I'll have
because like my sister turned me on to that show, and she's like, "Yeah, they don't call it cake; they call it sponge." And I'm like, "What?"
Yep, the Victoria sponge.
Yeah, they'll pick people apart. I'm just like, yeah, the microwave would fly in a place like that. So,
well, you guys should look at my easiest trifle ever video that I did just around Christmas time. Yeah, no narration, no words, just music and video. Easiest trifle ever. I think it was December 23rd or 24th. I published it.
Did somebody post a question to me or something?
No, Marcus Aurelus 187 said he's surprised you didn't make your own reactor.
So the reason I bought the Geo was that I had never had a calcium reactor before. And while I understood like the principles of it, I never had experience with one. And when I started looking at the parts and what I'd need to do it at the time, I just went and I said, I can go ahead and just purchase one. It'll cost a little bit more, but it'll at least give, I know it's a solid product. It works. I will see if it is big enough for this system once it fully matures. If anything, I might talk to Geo and say, hey, what do you think about making a second section for a commercial grade reactor where you could stack another 18 inches on top of it?
Yep.
Isn't that what that guy does?
I've done it with skimmers in the past, and I don't know if I've ever seen it on a reactor, but it's the same principle.
Bill Wan does that.
Oh.
He makes these stacks. We can have I think you and I will have side conversations about that, but I've seen those in the wild before. And I'm pretty sure that someone who has experience building calcium reactors can probably do a stacked calcium reactor well. That's all I'm going to probably say about that.
Well, and even seeing the one like the Long Island Aquarium, one of their older videos, he had that. It wasn't a really thick diameter, but they were like ultra tall and it was like something they made or something. They're like, yeah, we made this and it still works. So I'm just like, okay, I'm getting it now. If anything, though, I'd probably try to change the shape of the reactor body, possibly. to like redivert how water circulates through it. But
The person to ask about that is kind of Greg. I think he's been using calcium reactors for 20 years. So there are little nuances that he can explain about, like just air and making sure the air, where you input the air so you don't get a lot of noise. He just has these little tips about, like, he can look at a calcium reactor before he even sees it running and say that one is probably going to get a lot of vibration and a lot of air, because just where the air is injected. So if you're going to build one,
I know that was funny because I just hear Greg about something, because he's like, I won't do a geo. It's got thumb screws on it. I don't do that.
yes,
It's gotta be another type of twist lock mechanism.
He
I don't
is
do thumb
allergic
screws.
to thumb screws. And I mean, I hate thumb screws, but I hate dealing with them. I will deal with them. You will not find a piece of equipment on his tank that uses thumb screws at all.
We ever have a once we get back to reef shows, we gotta see if we can take Greg to an escape room, and to get out of the room, you're gonna have to undo thumb screws, and the lighting is gonna be green tinted.
Hey,
I'm
Camaro
definitely
kid.
sending him this stream. I'm sending him this part of this stream. Maybe I'll send him a thumb screw T-shirt, something with a thumb screw on it. And
It has to be a green T-shirt too. It says like, I like green lights and thumb screws.
Hey, Camaro kid. Yeah, a couple people are saying the sound and picture is off. How are you guys? I'm seeing both of you fine.
Looks okay to me.
Okay. Maybe it's the actual.
I'm seeing both of.
oh, sorry, I just
that's
pulled
okay.
it up on YouTube too.
Yeah, maybe it's the actual rebroadcast from the StreamYard website. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have a big ass calcium reactor that I'm going to be setting up, and it's Pat Murphy's calcium reactor that I bought from him. It's good. Oh, it's good. Okay. Robert Poorman says his audio is lagging. Maybe it's a local thing where people are, depending on what server you were running through.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on YouTube on my phone, and it looks Alex
okay.
is 1080p HD.
Marcus Orlis used PVC fittings routed to fit over acrylic and got weld-on product to bind them.
Oh. That's for a reactor? I'm guessing to build a reactor?
Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay. Alex, if you built a skimmer, I'm pretty sure you could build a calcium reactor.
Oh yeah, now that I've got experience with one, I could do it. I probably would do PVC instead of acrylic. I could say I'd probably just do that because I'm a little more comfortable with it.
So how important is it to actually see the media while it's in the reactor? Like, does it matter that you're able to see what's going on?
So for me with my Geo, I always felt it important so that I could see if things were running down, but I could also see if it was getting clogged up. It's like the Geo, the way I've always run it, it's always got a lot of bubbles in it. So it's always a fairly noisy reactor for me, which isn't a big deal. But every now and then what would happen is you get kind of an airlock in the pump, and it'll kind of go through every, couple hours or maybe every couple days. You'll hear it where it's like the pump is kind of sucking air, and it just kind of goes through until eventually it starts pulling through again. So for me, being able to see that was pretty important. The only downside to that is if you have high-powered lighting that is hitting the reactor, it'll start growing a lot of fun algae inside, which obviously it likes the low pH where it's growing.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
No, you finish first. Oh.
The location where the calcium reactor is going to be on the left-hand side of the stud wall where there's a narrow gap. And my husband's going to build shelves in there, one for the calcium reactor. he's going to do a setup for the Camor SPTP2, whatever the peristaltic pump. I'm also going to put the dosing pump there. And if I do go GHL and have a doser and a controller, it'll all go in there. And there's hydro right nearby, so we've got space for power bars. So when I want to do anything with it, I just go down this little channel. But the nice part of it is that there's no lighting anywhere near there. The lighting that's going to be over the 150, depending what I do with it, it's the Kessel AP700 right now that's over there. And I may leave it there if I decide to turn the 150 into the refugium proper. But it can't really bleed through because of the angle that the wood is on. Like, it's dark back in that corner. And that is one of the things we thought about, because we could have put it on this side of the wall. There's space right above the sump pit. And as it is, I'm going to be running the hoses through the stud wall. They're going to go behind the sump pit drain and come back over to the tank. We left a really narrow gap at the back that's about 1 inch at the widest. And of course, it's a curve. And I have ice cap magnet mounted tube holders that I'm going to use there to put the hoses in so that they can feed down into the water. So we've got it all planned. It's just a matter of putting it together and doing it. And the dosing containers will be on the floor. So,
and you're going to use color-coded like tubing just so it's easy to know what's what.
I don't know, because I know what the stuff looks like. Like I know the calcium's always like a tan color. The magnesium always has bubbles in it, and the alkalinity you can always tell by the end of the tube. Because I have to be able to reach in, because you have to keep that tube clear every single day. You've got to clear that cart. Well, at least the stuff I'm dosing right now, you do. It's the C-Chem reef carbonate. That stuff's concentrated, so you have to clear the end of that tube every single day. Yeah.
Okay. Where's your CO2 bottle going to go?
There's going to be a bracket for it that's going to be attached to the stud wall in whatever location it needs to be able to feed the calcium reactor. And I don't know whether that's going to be above or below, but I was explaining to him it has to be at a level where I can see the regulator easily and adjust it if I need to. So that's going to determine, and it's big. It's like tall, and it's in a box right now that's massive. So we're going to have to get it out and organize everything. I haven't bought the CO2 bottle yet. That's the only part I don't yet have.
Make sure, because what kind of regulator are you using?
It's an American Pinpoint Marine. It's a needle valve. And at some point, I realize I may decide to upgrade to a carbon doser based on what people say about that. But I mean, until I get a controller, there's not much point in doing that, right?
No, you don't need a controller with a carbon doser.
Oh, is that right? You don't need to.
No. I watched the pH, like the way I ran my calcium reactor, the pH probe could only shut things off if it got below like 6.45. But it should never happen because the carbon doser is giving you a constant level and the peristaltic pump's giving you a constant level. There's not a need to really, you'll get a little variation in pH every day because of the natural swing of the tank, but you shouldn't have to do anything unless consumption changes.
Right.
One thing I'll say though is mount your regulator and tank above the level of the reactor and make sure you put extra CO2 line in it, even if it's just coiled up. And the reason is, if your check valve fails and water backflows through that line,
you destroy the regulator.
Well, I know for sure on a carbon dose, it's done.
It's done.
The others, I mean, if they got brass or if it's not stainless steel, salt water is going to corrode them and mess them up too. But that's one thing, because it did happen to me once, but I had the tank up higher and I had about 10 extra feet of CO2 tubing on it.
And you know what? That's good advice. And it's kind of just serendipity that the way it works out, the calcium reactor is so tall that it's going to have to go below the bottle so that I can even get at it. because there's no room in there to put a step stool or a ladder. It's too narrow a space. So that's one of the challenges, is that it has to be at a level where I can handle it. Yeah, that's good advice.
I think without even the check valve, I think water just ends up going. I think I tried it to see, and water, because of the way water is injected into your, I think even if I think a check valve is a necessary equipment. I know the carbon doser and most regulators you buy come with it.
It does, yeah. The one that I have does.
I don't think I would have been able to use a calcium reactor, even though I took it off, without the carbon doser. Because you just set it at whatever bubbles, and it's consistent, and then you just control your dosing by how much with the Camor. Yeah. And I think that was the big thing. I think before BRS did that, and then I not only the BRS videos, but then I talked to Devin, talked to Greg, and talked to other people who've used calcium reactors. And it always seemed like this myth where it seems like people were adjusting, multiple things. I saw people who said their thing get clogged, and Greg said, tune it so you have a drip, like not a drip, you have like a constant stream. Yeah. There's less of a chance of it clogging if you have a constant stream. And he said, just set your pH at a constant level, and then just turn up how much you dose.
And it's funny you should say that, because I did actually consider doing that with the carbonate that I'm dosing, the CChem Reef carbonate, because I thought about mixing it with RODI water, diluting it, and just running it constantly on the Jabo dosing pump. Seriously, because that was the only way I could figure. First of all, if it's diluted, it's less likely to crystallize. Okay. And second of all, if it's running constantly, it's less likely to have the chance to dry on that area and clog.
I see what you mean.
And then because it's a temporary setup, I just went, it's easy to reach in and just pinch the line and watch the crystals float through the water. The fish chase them.
Before I got that peristaltic pump on there, that was like the biggest headache with the calcium reactor, because I had a needle valve for adjusting the flow.
Yeah.
And just the air bubbles in it would put enough back pressure to slow the flow down. You have to go in every day and check the. I went to that peristaltic pump, that was over. And I was like, best investment I could have made.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people about that, and so I just spent the money. It was not cheap for that. I probably spent more on that little pump than I paid Pat for the actual calcium reactor. It's an Octo 200, 220, something like that. Yeah.
That's the one that doesn't have thumb screws, right?
Yeah. I think,
that's
I don't
the
know.
one Greg has.
Who knows?
One last thing about calcium reactors, and I think it's specific to me because I had a small tank. Tuning it on a new tank is a pain. Like, just use your 2-part until I think a lot of my issues with calcium reactors were self-inflicted. I think tuning it when you have very little consumption is, you're gonna just drive yourself crazy. Just continue to use the 2-part until you've gotten to a certain point, and then just put the calcium reactor on.
And I think we had this discussion about dosing in general, is the stages that you go through that are dependent on the uptake in your tank, and sort of the levels where, when it becomes too time consuming, expensive, and pain in the ass to use 2-part, that's when you seriously consider, then you add kalkwasser. And then there soon comes a time when your tank outgrows the ability of the kalkwasser to keep up. Then you go to a calcium reactor. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I want to have it ready. I won't run it, but I want to have everything I need, so that when the time comes, because you know what it's like, even if you're testing and you're seeing the trends, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that next week. I'll do that next week. And all of a sudden your ALK drops to 6. And it's like, I need to do that now. So
if I just turn it up a little bit. Once you realize you're using a lot of 2-part, that's when you put the calcium reactor on. And if you see that you're getting high, you just turn the 2-part down.
Yeah.
Doing it on a new tank was such a nightmare. It was that was a big mistake.
Yeah, I remember I was up to 3 cups of bionic a week.
Holy smokes.
That was of each part, so technically all 6 cups between the two. And I was
Wow.
starting to hit 4 when I got the Geo in. But yeah, like, so what O was saying is that I spent a lot of time, like I was very nervous about overdoing it with the calcium reactor because, you know, everyone's like, it's for maintaining, not for increase or
Right.
decrease. And it was like,
Get it
those
where you
2
want
parts.
it. Get it where you want it, and then you bring it online and keep it there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just came into okay, well, I'm still adding 4 cups a week of this stuff. Let me turn up the calcium reactor a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was like, oh, I'm down a cup. Let me tune it a little bit more and just keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of thought about the carbon doser route when I was looking at the regulators. And first of all, I had the misconception that I would absolutely require a controller to make it work right. But second of all, I thought, well, if I get the regulator that's more manual, I'll have a better understanding of the relationship of the different processes and how it actually works. Because when you're troubleshooting, you need to know how it actually works before you can solve a problem. And I just feel like if I relied on something that was where a lot was going on that I didn't see and I didn't have input into, if there was a problem, I wouldn't understand what I needed to do to fix it. So that's why I thought, well, okay, well, I'll go with the needle valve because at least it's a visual, it's a manual, and everything's connected. So you soon get a sense of, cause and effect. So if something goes wrong, it's like, okay, what was the cause? So I don't know. That's just how I think, and that's how I approach most things, and it's helped me a lot over the years in doing that troubleshooting. Because man, I've had a lot of times when I've needed to.
Put that calcium reactor on, like just have it running once you have the tank up and running, but don't turn on the CO2.
Yeah.
And that way, you can turn it up, turn the flow up, get the bubbles out, put the
Figure
medium,
it out.
and
Yeah.
you can start. I started by just putting the pH at 7. And one of the cool things I did is I just put the effluent into a HANA DKH checker and just checked to see what was the, I got to the point where I had to dilute it to get the actual DKH because it got so high. But you can actually test the alkalinity and see, coming out of it, fill a HANA checker and see. But just have it there and you can play with it. But I think the carbon doser for me, that was.
I have a feeling ultimately I will. Yeah.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that too is it's just so easy to set it where you need it and not have to do anything with it. I don't have experience with other CO2 regulators, but I know if you don't get a really good one, you might be fiddling with it fairly often from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I blew up my Vertex because my regulator was crappy? Did I ever tell you guys that story? It wasn't Pinpoint. It was another company, Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
And I called them and told them something about the gauges. And the guy said, don't even worry about that second gauge. It's just a dummy. That's what the guy from Milwaukee told me on the phone.
Is that the low pressure gauge?
Something happened and I released like a third of the CO2 in the bottle. And my brand new $500 Vertex calcium reactor, it exploded.
I remember this now.
Yes. Funny enough, it didn't burst at the seams, the acrylic actually, just to show you how good the seams are of that Vertex. But yeah, it literally exploded. And that's when I went out and bought the carbon doser the next day.
See, I hear stuff like this and it scares me. And I think, okay, this is why I don't want a calcium reactor. But when you hear it and why it happened,
I called everyone. Like I called Greg, I called Devin, and they all said the same thing to me. That should not be happening. That guy is telling you crap. But when you have the guy from Milwaukee telling you, like, dude, like, we haven't used that chamber for a year. I remember Greg telling me, like, you know, Greg was trying to be nice, but I don't know why that guy would tell you that. And Dev was saying, I've never heard that before, because that gauge is supposed to tell you how much pressure is in the bottle.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. But I got a carbon doser after, and I realized that these guys and then after, funny enough, they never answered my calls or emails after that episode. So,
see, and that's kind of what I was reading when it comes to the regulators. I read that the American Pinpoint, because they're an instrumentation company, that's where the quality was there. Within the price range I was willing to pay at that time to start this thing up, like to get it running, because I don't want to spend, well, I think it was about $200 for the regulator. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money and then change my mind or go in a different direction, you know. So just to get it running for the very first time, that's why I bought this regulator.
Yep. I thought that Milwaukee was an instrument company. Turns out I was wrong. One thing for Alex, when I go to Reefapalooza and local frag swaps, there is a high school in Pennsylvania that Millionaire Coral, that they use it as a teaching, you know, for kids. They have a huge system, thousands of gallons, and whatever corals they grow, they take it to local frag swaps, Reefapaloozas, and anything on the East Coast and sell, and that's how they fund. 2 teachers do it, great people. The guy told me, we were talking about carbon dosers before I knew anything about calcium reactors. He's like, oh yeah, I built my own. It costs like $10 in parts. He said literally the project box that the thing is encased in is the most expensive part of the thing. So I don't know if I'm not sure. I just think Alex would probably find that interesting, and maybe
you know, it wouldn't surprise me. That's one of those things where it's like, oh, but you crack one open to see what's going on inside, or just use the thing. And
he gave me one, but I lost it. But that, like I said, that's before I knew what a calcium reactor was or what it could be used for or anything.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about those is that they have a fairly good reliability. As long as you don't get them wet, they don't respond well to that. You know, as far as I know, and I never did get to that point with my old tank, but you know, the one thing about regulators, and this will be something, Cindy, if you haven't looked at it, is a single stage versus a dual stage regulator. You really got to go with a minimum of a dual stage if you're not going to do something electronic.
Okay.
Because when that tank pressure gets low, it could do a tank dump. And I prepared for that, but it never got implemented. Was that the pH probe in the reactor, if it got too low, it would shut off the regulator's power. And I had an apex solenoid valve on the CO2 line. So it would cut off the gas line to it as well. So it would cut the power to the regulator. If the regulator failed, the solenoid was closed on it. So it was a double backup on it.
I'll have to take a look at it. I honestly don't. I've had it out of the box a couple times just to see what the parts were like, how hefty it was, and all that kind of thing. I got to say hi to Chase V Reefing. Hey Chase, tuning in late. Hope I can come on soon. Working a lot of Saturdays. Good to hear from everyone. Glad you could come by. Chase has a 250 underway that's plumbed in with a whole bunch of other stuff. And he also said, fun to watch your builds lately, Cindy and Alex. Thank you. Such as it is, right?
So jealous of you two building new tanks.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I can only say I have fresh water at this point.
Yeah, and I don't even have a tank in my house. It's at my daughter's place. So, you know, I'm going there tomorrow actually to bring home some coral to see how it does. I've got to finish some testing just to compare parameters. But what I've tested so far seems to match up pretty good. So
if you do go with a GHL, would you get a automatic tester?
Yes, that would be the main reason. I
Oh,
would never,
really?
I wouldn't let the doser do anything. No, I mean, I have to be in control of that. I want to make those decisions and know what's going on. It takes a way more trust than I have, but I would get the tester because of the amount of time it takes and how fiddly it is and how hard it is to read the colors and, you know.
I agree with you. That's exactly, I know what my tank consumes because I set the doser, like they're not even connected.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happens, I know like I need to hand dose 10 mils to Triton every day. So I don't know if it's the East Coast moisture thing, but man, my Apex energy bars need replacing or repairing pretty often. I don't know if it's a moisture thing, and they always say it's. Alex is laughing. They always say it's water damage, which I can only think it's because maybe of.
Oh my God! Heaven forbid you build aquarium equipment and it gets water damage.
Hold on here. Oh,
Jesus!
I got a different theory that's turning in my head.
No. I'm just saying what they told me. I'm not.
I know, but you know. You can only plug in and unplug so many pieces of equipment into a plug before you physically wear out the prongs. And I think due to the amount of equipment that you cycle through your tank every week, you're wearing out plugs. That's why they're not working anymore.
No, I guarantee you I'm not, because I just use the stuff for feed mode. You know what? That is a thing. It could be true, but I doubt it.
It was totally made up, by the way.
It could be. I don't know, man. I love my Apex, but I think I don't use it anymore for like mission critical. I am surprised when I see people have tanks where like the Apex like controls like their like, you know, you've set up that entire like system with tanks, and I saw the video where you water tested it to make sure when everything shut off and it drains, and you know, you and your husband went through an entire thing to make sure that I am surprised when people like set up their stuff for like the optical sensors to like detect when to do things, because like when I had the first version of the optical sensors, that thing it failed so many times.
Yeah.
The first round of PMUPs I had, I think I have like 5 or 6 of those things because
I remember those PMUPs. Man, oh man.
They're good, but you can only use them in RODI water, because if anything gets in the impellers, like I think I have 4 of them where the impellers are soft plastic, so they break easy. The FMM, and then you know, because of the way the stuff is daisy chained, if something gets unplugged, then everything downstream is just
yeah.
And then I never noticed this before, but now that I'm testing the hydros on my nano tank, the hydros, the head unit itself is basically sealed. Water cannot get into it. So when you plug a unit, when you plug anything into it, it locks, and then it comes with silicone covers to cover the ports that aren't being used. So there's, you know, of course, there's always risk with the plug bar, but the head unit itself, there's no risk of water getting in it. I think it's IP65 splash proof rated, not, you know, and I think the Apex has exposed USB ports. So I'm not at the point where I'm ready to replace my Apex with a hydros, but I'm just intrigued by some of the things that the hydros. I know one of the things, the negative people say is the plug bar is cheap, but it's sold the cheap. You know, they say it's cheap, but it only costs $25.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm paying $200 and then I'm getting a $20 device.
You could buy a couple extras to have on hand for when it fails.
Yeah,
you know, and I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, people, you can actually buy these on Amazon and use them with Alexa with an app, and then just hook it up to your hydros, which I think Greg has convinced me that that's not a negative. You're buying a cheap power bar for $20 and you're using it on your aquarium.
Whose live stream was it? You were on the live stream, and somebody said, Alexa, turn off the lights. And it turned off your lights. You remember that?
Yeah, Dave used to do that.
Oh, did I say that too loud?
Yeah, well, I think you're on very low. Well, actually, I changed the names so it's no longer...
Well, hey,
I'm sorry.
I gotta jump off tonight. I gotta go make a late night run.
Okay.
It's great talking to you, Cindy, and as always.
Good night.
You guys have a good night, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
All right, bye.
Bye.
My television is right behind me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. And there was a time where I was having huge internet issues and I needed to. So one of the ways, instead of moving behind the TV, and I put an Alexa like little strip there where I would tell her to just turn, things off.
Right. Yeah.
Until Dave said, turn everything off, I didn't realize you could actually give a command to turn every device that Alexa.
Oh no.
Holds. So when he said it, like, I got disconnected from the stream and everything, because my lights and everything are, so literally my TV,
I remember that.
everything went off, and I realized, like, you can actually, which is actually a command I use now. Like when I'm going to bed, I'm just like, hey, turn everything off.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you can actually give that command. But I love the hydros though. I absolutely, I'm loving it.
So you're thinking it's probably going to be something that you would use long term, or are you just kind of playing with it?
Right now, I think as of right now, I think the best application for it is someone who, I don't think you and I, or even Alex, we're like normal reefers, because we have so much, not only money invested in our tank, but someone who just bought, let's say, a water box 170 or, a $500, $600 tank. It's hard to convince them to spend the same money on a controller that costs more or the same as the tank. But I purposely bought the Hydros controller where it would replace like my energy bar that I had on it. So for the same price, I got a Hydros Control 2, I got 2 plug bars, and I got their ATO. And it's been running flawlessly since I put it on. Like it's no long, I don't even notice it's there anymore. I just use feed mode. It controls the ATO. It controls my temperature, and it just works. I don't know. I think that's the best thing you can say, where if you have a piece of device and you're using it and it just works and just blends to the background and does its job.
Well, and you're not suffering anxiety, worrying what might happen if there's a point of failure in that chain somewhere.
No,
because it's more simple. It's not so complex that if somebody interrupts you when you're trying to program something, you got to go all the way back to the beginning, or you risk, disaster. I don't know. I have to really look into it. I've done a little bit of light research, and a lot of reef keepers that I really respect use the GHL products. So and it also gives me a source of people who've said they're quite willing to help, when it comes to setting up and questions. And it's crazy.
GHL, solid hardware. I think the programming was my only thing, but in terms of the hardware, solid plug bar, solid. I just don't use Windows at the time. You needed Windows to set it up. But solid hardware. I had issues with their dosing pumps. Phil, ReefGrrl, and I, ReefGrrl, we used to talk a lot where we had just dosing heads failed. But hopefully they've solved that issue.
Well, I get the sense just from recently that they've taken a lot of that on board, as far as the issues that people were having and the development that they've done and made improvements.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll find out, when the time comes to actually spend the money. Who knows? I really have to I had $1,000 plumbing bill just to install the radiant heating system downstairs. So, like you become almost, and it's not like I don't have it budgeted, because I had the budget for it, but you become almost desensitized to how expensive things are.
If you're going to be just use a controller to just conveniently turn things on and off so you don't have to unplug things, then I think you can go with anyone. I'm at the point now where that's what I use my controller for. But any kind of fancy stuff, I used to let it know when my RODI was low and needed refilling. I've pulled all that. That's part of my project I was doing tonight. I pulled all that stuff off. I just use it now for feed mode, skimmer. Let me know, I use it for very basic function. I like what Jake Adams is saying these days, where I am the controller. So I'm kind of adopting that, not going crazy with the Apex stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Marcus Aurelius, that I think was Paul. That's Broke Reef Man 45. His name is Paul. He programmed he used an Arduino to program his lights, I believe. And I think it was his lights, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. There's Phil right there.
Yeah. I remember he and I were talking about that. I sold mine. I ended up giving up on mine. I really ended up giving up on mine. But at the time, I was just annoyed that I was a Mac user and I had to get a copy of Windows to set it up. But I think that has changed now. I think it's different.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, what was I going to say? Oh, things change so fast too. Because, I've been in this hobby for just over 10 years. And I still remember when you had to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a wave box for water flow. So even this technology that's coming along now, by the time I actually make a decision, which, for now I'm planning on handling it for the summer myself, and then we'll see what happens. Because let's face it, you can't travel anywhere right now, and feel safe. So it's going to be a while before I will need to leave my reef for any length of time. So we'll see what happens. I'm keeping an open mind. If this hydros turns out to be something that will perform those basic functions that I'm okay with trusting, then great. If I can find an auto tester, like if something comes along that will be more reasonably priced and still do a good job, I'm okay with that too. I don't have to have one device does all.
Yes.
Because that's where you run into the complexity becoming so great that you risk a single point of failure ruining your tank. Yeah.
I travel for work. I don't travel as much as I did, a year or so ago. And there was a point where I had, nowadays when I see people say like, hey, I'm not purchasing a light unless it's controlled by my Apex, I kind of laugh at that a little bit. There was a point where I had every device controlled by my Apex. And this was a me thing. Now, I'm not blaming the Apex with any of this. And so I had gyres, I had them ramping up the gyres, everything. And my Apex failed when I was out of town.
Yeah, I remember that.
So nothing was working. So I had my wife my wife was unplugging controllers and running extension cords across the living room to keep stuff running. That wasn't fun. That wasn't fair to her either. But yeah. And I think that was caused by just a USB, some kind of Aquabus cable disconnecting somewhere. And everything downstream from that just
I've said before, a discussion I got into with somebody on a saltwater Facebook group about, I would much prefer to drive a horse and buggy than a modern car if I don't want an Apex for my tank. And I'm going, well, like if your skimmer fails and you're 200 miles from home or 2 hours away from home, what do you do? If your skimmer's overflowing? And I went, well, what do you do if you're 2 hours away from home and your skimmer is overflowing. Well, I shut it off. And I said, so when I get home, mine will have continued overflowing. So I shut it off and I fixed the problem. And so I got a bit more of a mess to clean up, but I got way more money in the bank than you. And you know, and it is like that. And these guys, and I've said this before, if you're right into it, you spend more time looking at your phone than you do at your tank. And like this one guy was complaining because he ignored an alarm because he tested he checked one other parameter or one other thing, and it was reading okay. So he ignored an alarm and he woke up in the morning and his sump had drained all over the floor. So it's because he looked at his phone. He was home. He didn't go and check the tank.
2 years ago,
I don't get it.
I went to Reef. I think Southern California has, you know, some of the most experienced, best collection of reefers. So I went to Reefapalooza, California, hung out with Greg, Phil, you know, a lot of the reef with the best tanks you see on Instagram. And one thing that I got from is just how the thing is calm they are of how
I remember you mentioning that. They're laid back. They're so laid back.
They're just so calm and laid back. Like one guy said, like, hey, a light, something failed. And I'm like, you're not going to fix that? He's like, oh, I'll get to it. You know, when Greg was doing this tank, I'm like, dude, you didn't get water in it yet. He's like, I'll get to it. Like everything is just like, you know, like even now I keep saying, Greg, you're not going to hook up your calcium reactor. And everyone in this club who's been reefing for 20, 25 years, like my skimmer's not working, has been working for a week. It's like, it's fine. I'll get to it. It wasn't like me. I would have freaked out and tried to do all these things to fix it. And we're like, you know, like, oh, I'll get to it. It wasn't, you know, I'm not saying if the tank was dying, they would leave it, but it's like these little minor things, they don't overcompensate. It was just like, I'll fix it. The reef will recover.
Yeah.
When in the past, if I saw, you see the same thing, Jake Adams. If I had a tank with 20 corals and one died, I would freak out and readjust my lights and like do things. And you see like you have 30 corals and one of them is not doing well. Like why piss off the other 29? Just take the one and move him somewhere and see what happens instead of changing the flow, changing the light. It's just, you know.
But, you know, it takes time and experience to learn that, right? And it has to happen to you a few times. And if your tank is healthy and your system is healthy, it can withstand certain problems and almost adjust itself accordingly until you have a chance to address the problem. And sometimes if you jump in too fast, you almost make it worse, you know? Yeah, I put the comment up from Phil.
I have several EB8s in the hydros. They have all performed perfect except one EB8 32. Neptune charge $175 to fix, but now I know how to fix myself for under $5. I saw that video too, Phil. And based on the amount of, I have 3 EB8 32s. And I've been through a couple, so yeah, I saw that too.
Algae Man has 2 and loves for monitoring basic stuff, but don't trust them for everything. Use tons of ATOs and pumps. Only use standard controls. Yeah,
me too. Use my Tunzi ATO. Got rid of my ATK, so everything works on its own. Except my Neptune dose, and I'm not using that for, I'm just using that for like amino acids. So even if that goes out, the tank doesn't die. It's just aminos.
Exactly. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, you can come back from that. For example, with my coral essentials that I dose, when I had the Red Sea, I was dosing every day at a half dose. I generally do that. And then when I moved the tank, of course, I couldn't go every day because it was a 90-minute round trip. So I adjusted to just dosing when I was there. So I settled into a pattern of dosing 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's what I'm still doing now.
It's fine.
And I mean, you saw the polyp extension on the Miyagi torts. It's crazy, man. Anything in that tank that has the right light is doing really well. That brace in the middle is causing all kinds of problems for the SPS. And that's why I'm looking forward to getting them over here so that I can get them in the proper light again. But That changing that Coral Essentials dosing to every other day, 3 times a week, whatever, made a huge difference. And it was just a slight change, but I think it was better for the tank than going every day, you know? So
if it works.
yeah. And the other part of that is part of my rationale, whether it's correct or not, was that I didn't want the explosive growth I was getting in the Red Sea tank to continue because I had no space. They needed to survive. I did not want them to grow like mad because it would have been trouble. And so, you know, as a way to manage growth, it also probably had an impact, but it wasn't a drastic change. So it was a little change. So, you know, the tank adjusted itself.
I've heard people say that, like, when you have frags, you want explosive growth to fill the tank, but then once your system is mature, maybe you don't want that crazy explosive growth. Maybe you just want, you know, healthy, but unless you're fragging and selling, you know, normal growth might be, you know.
And I prefer strong, robust branching on the SPS, you know, where it's not going to break off because it's so brittle just by brushing your hand against it. I would much prefer that you have trouble getting it off the rock when you try and move the colony, because it literally won't break anywhere because it's such strong growth. I have had that. Ugly Man's asking aminos. I use the Coral Essentials Amino Grow, Amino Power Amino Grow. No, wait a minute, that's wrong. Coral Essentials Power Amino. They have a foundation pack of amino and grow, and then trace ABC. So the only amino that I'm using right now is the Coral Essentials amino. The blue bottle, not the juice. Can't afford the juice.
I use just Acro Power because you can put it on a doser, and it's one less thing to dose every day. But I do have some of the Brightwell, but I just dose it periodically. Phil told me that he thinks they do different things, so he does both. I think he said he does both, but I remember asking him, and he said he thinks they do different thing. But I dose it periodically. But the Acro Power gets a few, you know, milliliters. But I don't think I do so much water changes that I don't think, and I feed heavy, so I don't think it's necessary at this point. But
well, and apparently there are a couple of aminos that the corals can't generate within their own tissue via photosynthesis or intake of nutrients. They have to be supplied. Like I may be getting the details wrong, but
no,
there are a couple that you actually have to put in the water so the coral can take them up.
I've heard Jake Adams speak about that, but that type of stuff, I think until I have like a mature tank, I think Acro Power, enough people who I know and trust use it, and it looks good, so I'll continue to use it.
See, and Acro Power, I believe, is equivalent to the Coral Essentials Power Grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bright yellow, like a fluorescent yellow liquid. I don't know, I can't remember what Acro Power looks like.
Acro Power is just clear. I think the Red Sea is the yellow.
Oh, maybe, yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
But I used to like the Red Sea because then you just saw the way it just spread throughout the tank when you put it in. But I think they're all the same. I just prefer Acro Power because you can put it on a doser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is true. The Coral Amino and the Coral Grow do have to be refrigerated once they're opened. But we have plans for that.
You're gonna do like a whole refrigeration and.
Well, we think about it. If you buy a little wine fridge, they all have flexible gaskets around the doors, right? So you keep the bottle in the fridge, you run the tube into the bottle, and you just close the door on the line. The gasket isn't going to compress the line.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're afraid that it might compress the line, depends, I guess, what it's made of, you could use that RO tubing that's more rigid. And keep it in the fridge and have the doser draw it right out of the bottle in the fridge. I can't see why that would, because you don't have to shake it.
I think
So-
that works. I think with any doser these days that you decide to go with, whether it's GHLR, you can actually program it. You can say, hey, it takes 250 mil to go from the bottle to the tank where it dose, and then you can just program it in reverse so it pulls whatever's in the line back into the bottle, and just do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and you could mix it up a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that'll work. Or if if the fridge is close enough and the tank is bigger and you're dosing enough, maybe it's not in the line that long. I know the Red Sea one, you can leave it out of the fridge for a few days at a time.
The ones that you have trouble with are if they have to be shaken up.
Mm.
Because I'm really not willing to go to the extent of the magnetic stirrers and all that kind of thing. That's one step beyond where I'll go. And if I have room in the fridge for my caffeine-free Diet Pepsi, then what the heck?
Caffeine-free Diet Pepsi. What?
Oh, I can't do caffeine after like mid-afternoon anymore. I used to be able to drink it any time of day, but I get heart palpitations, and I feel nauseated, and it makes my heart race.
Ooh.
So I avoid caffeine after midday.
Making me feel bad. I usually drink a coffee before I go to sleep.
I used to until I turned 40. When I turned 40, after that, couldn't do it anymore.
Mm.
Hey, I gotta say hi to Hector. Hector, super late, but we're here. How are you, Hector? We're just saying we haven't seen you around much.
Is
Hope
Hector
everything's
who's in
okay.
New York?
Pardon?
Is Hector the guy who's in New York?
No, he's in Connecticut.
Connecticut.
He's Calypso's Reefs.
You know what? Yes, that he is. There's a couple of East Coast guys here where I usually have a couple of East Coast guys here. I think he's one of them. Yep.
Yeah. He's got some beautiful tanks going on there.
The East Coast guys here.
Oh,
I think he's one of them. Open another tab. I was trying to open the chat and I forgot to mute.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's getting to be that time of night again. I guess I should probably say goodnight and look forward to next week when everyone will have made more progress. And if you're free and you want to come on and show us what you're doing. It was great. I'm so happy that you were able to come on last Sunday because I really enjoyed that afternoon time slot. I really did.
I did. I thought you were going to do it again.
I am. I'm going to do it the last Sunday of every month.
Okay.
And then I might, my concern was I didn't want to do it alternate weeks because then no one would ever know what was happening when. Whereas if I do the different time on like one specific week every month, it's easier to remember. That's what I was thinking anyway. So I don't know, maybe I could go last Sunday and first Sunday.
I
That
think
might
as
be
long as
easier to
it's
remember.
scheduled in advance and we all get notified, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I like that afternoon. And then like I said, the tank was on.
Yes. Yep.
All our lights. I think everyone, West Coast, East Coast, our tanks are like international can they can participate, but I think most of the US and Canada, our lights are on.
Yeah. And even in the UK, it was 7 p.m.
Yep.
So that's still a pretty decent time for most people to at least have some light available. So, yeah. Oh, hey, Chimp the Reefer. My goodness, everybody's dropping in late. So, yeah. So, thanks, Oral. It was good. Good to see you.
Anytime.
Well, we never did. We did talk about controllers, but not in any huge depth. We'll have to save that for a Sunday afternoon chat.
All right. All right. All right. We can.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll say goodnight. And thanks again for spending the time. I appreciate it. And sorry about Alexa.
All right. All right. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night. And everybody in the chat and on the replay, thanks for hanging in for all this time. And it was great to see you all. We still got 26 people in here. And it's about time I got off here. And I think I might need to get some orange juice. My blood sugar's acting up a little bit, but I can still speak. So I shall say good night.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.